Welcome to Manufacturing Hub, live real time. This is day two of day two of ProveIt. We have a bunch of coverage of Manufacturing Hub has a bunch of coverage at ProveIt. First, we want to thank Walker, you and the enormous and amazing team for having Vlad and I and giving us this amazing space, probably best space we've ever had.
That's awesome.
It will now be like the bare minimum that we judge everyone against. And I know a lot of people who are going to be upset about that because how awesome this space is. So,
I appreciate you guys being here, really, man. Seriously.
Absolutely. We'll get into ProveIt in just a moment. I do want to let everyone know we're a little bit early. Manufacturing Hub, Vlad and I are on every Wednesday at 4 o'clock East Coast time, 1 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Central European time for all of our European viewers. There's always like 4 or 5 of them, which is pretty cool. We are here having fun. We are asking questions. We're going to do our best to go bring in any live questions. So if you guys are watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, which is where most of you are going to be, we've got questions coming in. We'll do our best to answer. We are super tight on time, especially with Walker. Honestly, I'm shocked that we have a whole 50 minutes to go talk live on the internet.
I told the team to make sure they set the side of time.
Absolutely.
You guys took the trouble to come out here. I want to make sure that you ask every question you need to have asked. Yes.
Oh, no, you don't. I guarantee you don't want to say that. No, not every question. We have a hard limit. We cannot be here Thursday at midnight still asking questions. Okay, we'd probably have people watching, but we can't. So, Walker, I guess if people have somehow stumbled onto the internet for the first time, if they don't know who you are, if they don't know what ProveIt is, can you maybe give a little bit of background of you, the amazing work that you've been doing, and this fantastic conference that we're at?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I'm Walker Reynolds. I'm the president and solutions architect at 4.0 Solutions, a company that I own. I was a former integrator. I actually just sold my integrator, Intelligent Integration, last September to the employees. I've been in industrial automation and Industry 4 for the better part of 25 years. I've been doing digital transformation primarily since 2008. Spent the first 10 years of my career working for the end user in mining, printing, steel industry, and tier 1 automotive. And then I moved into consulting. People started listening to me after I won an Ignition Firebrand Award in 2012 or 13. I can't remember which year. We built the largest standalone SCADA system in the world using Ignition, working with Kepware and Inductive Automation on actually building new features for their platforms. So if you know of the Kepware API that was actually developed for the client that we built the largest standalone SCADA system in the world, Inductive Automation built the gateway area network for that project. UDTs were added in version 7.7 as part of that project. So people really started kind of listening then. I started my integrator in 2015, and we started working on some of the most incredible projects in the world. I mean, I've worked for, you name a really digitally advanced company in the world, and I've been involved in architecture with them. 2018, we started shooting YouTube videos because at Intellic we started seeing, I mean, you guys already know this, but all customers were making the same mistakes in the first 18 months. And I really was just shooting videos on what is IIoT, what is digital transformation, stop getting this stuff wrong. And it blew up into this huge community. We started a Discord at 4.0 Solutions and IIoT.University, which is where I'm at now. And I teach a big mastermind program every month. And we do workshops and vendor training, and we do enterprise training for end users, teaching their employees what digital transformation all is. We've been doing that since 2020. We have a big Discord server, the Industry 4 Discord server. I think we have 7,000 members now, 8,000 members. We're one of the community servers on Discord. We have 15,000 students at IoT.University, and our social media covers about 100,000 unique individuals. We're pretty big on LinkedIn as well.
Absolutely.
ProveIt. Where does it come from? It's a concept that I want to give Zach Scriven credit here. You know, Zach is the one who said to me 3-4 years ago, he's like, by the way, Zach comes up with some of the greatest ideas in the world. I always say this all the time. You know, 1 out of every 3 ideas he comes up with is groundbreaking.
Yes.
And 2 of them, you got to keep him from implementing. Otherwise, he's going to drive us off a cliff. You know, it's like one of those. He came up with this idea, community conference, and last year, I wrote a proposal, I put it together, I budgeted it, I looked at it, and I said, we'll do this one day. But let's kind of play it, and let's see what happens. And last year at Hanover Messe, I had a meeting. Sam Tiara, shout out to Sam, set up a meeting with Todd Edmonds, who's the I think he's the chief operating officer of Smart Manufacturing, Global Smart Manufacturing for Dell. And we got to see Dell Native Edge, which is a groundbreaking infrastructure management platform that Dell came out with, that they actually are really showcasing at this show. But Todd said, hey, listen, if you guys are ever him and Ryan Fournier said, if you guys are ever interested in doing a show in Texas, we got you.
Yeah.
And he didn't know that we had ever considered it. And so I came back from Hanover Messe, and I looked at that proposal again, and I prayed about it, and talked to my financial advisor, and I'm like, let's do this. And so starting in June of last year, we said, we're going to put on the ProveIt Conference 2025.
Yep.
And here's ProveIt. We have a virtual factory that we have built. There's a server rack that's out. It's not built. It's a copy of an actual manufacturing facility located here in Dallas, Texas, one of Intellic's clients. We have a cloud and local infrastructure that are bridged and clustered together using HiveMQ, MQTT broker. Phenomenal implementation. This is the first time I've done HiveMQ at this type of distribution.
Yeah.
So I've never actually done local bridging with HiveMQ. I've always done horizontal clustering, and we've done some enormous implementations with Hive. But I learned a lot about some really incredible features in HiveMQ's broker that made this infrastructure possible. But at the end of the day, we have 36 vendors here, 18 of which who are presenting on stage, who are given 16 weeks. They were given a specification document and access to the unified namespace from this virtual factory. All 36 of those vendors, they came up with a problem statement. They came up with a solution. They built that solution. They quantified how long it took, how much it cost total, and they are presenting it in 30 minutes and then doing 15 minutes of Q&A, and they're being compared against each other.
And I love that. There's definitely more to talk about. I just want to say thank you for putting them up on stage and making them answer those questions. Yes, thank you for putting them up on stage. Thank you for having Amy and Jeff on stage as the MCs with the strict instructions of do not let these people leave without answering those questions. And I think in the initial vendor comment, you said some of them were like uncomfortable with those questions. And man, they're absolutely knowing the vendors that I know, which is probably only about 2/3 of them that is absolutely a loaded question for so many of them.
It's always, it depends. Right?
It depends.
We need to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Like call us for pricing, right? And I appreciate the ones that are saying, hey, the solution, the application, the software costs X, and it took 3 days, or it took 120 hours, or something like that. And then you can go quantify what an hourly rate is. I feel like it's almost unfair. Like one person could say it's $50 an hour. One person can say it's $400 an hour. No one's going to say it's $400 an hour when you're asked to go show that number. So I love that. I love the fact that they're up there. I love the fact that they're on stage. I love the fact that people get to go ask those questions. I think Vlad and I from the very beginning talked about the concept. Amazing. Vlad has talked about it. We've done a couple of live builds. The thing that I've always told Vlad, and I tell anyone looking to do this, is you have no idea the amount of time you're going to invest in it. Like, I can only imagine you and the team are like thousands of hours each into what this is to get us here today.
I have spent I'm not afraid to share what it costs, and we're a transparent organization. So we didn't lose money. I mean, we lost money if you count the labor my employees put in and the team put in. But capital wise, we actually profited on the show, and we have money to carry over to next year's show. We have 36 sponsors that are broken down into title, gold, silver, and bronze. The title and gold, they all present on stage. There are a couple of silver who are presenting on stage as well, and then you have all the bronze. They're in the exhibit hall. Everybody's got a booth, but the bronze are in the exhibit hall, and their presentations are being filmed. We have 3 camera crews coming through and filming their presentations. Big shout out to Jeff Winter and Amy Williams, who accepted the invite to come and be the MCs. We have a Dell stage. We have a Google stage. Google isn't the other title sponsor. And Amy's on the Google stage. Jeff Winter's on the Dell stage. They have complete control of that vendor once that vendor steps on the stage. And their instruction is make sure that they followed the rules that are in the document and make sure they answer the 4 questions. Other than that, let them rip.
Walker, I wanted to bring this back really briefly to your background, right? Before we dive in more into the conference. And the typical question that I always like to ask is, how did you get into manufacturing and industrial automation? But ultimately, you've given us that information. So I wanted to change that question a little bit and ask you, what made you stay in industrial automation? Because I think if I was completely frank with you, a lot of other industries are poaching some of the best architects, some of the best engineers. So what kept you going all these years?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I'm going to try and answer it briefly. So I grew up in upstate New York in the 1980s when manufacturing did its mass exodus from the Rust Belt.
Yep.
I, like most people, believe that it was due to corporate greed, that it was they were chasing cheap labor. I saw the impact that the manufacturing moving away from the Northeast had on communities and families. When I went to college in the 90s, I discovered, no, it actually wasn't greed. That wasn't the primary reason. The primary reason was that when the third industrial revolution happened in 1969 and the PLC was invented, Germany and Japan adopted the technology first, and they got ahead of our core manufacturing verticals here in the United States, specifically automotive. If you looked at the supply chain in automotive, it was something like at one point 31% of all industry could be traced directly to automotive in the United States. So in order for American companies to survive, they had to offshore to chase cheap labor while they tried to catch up technologically. All right, fast forward, my first job out of college, I got a job working in a salt mine. I had a certification in basic electronics. I get introduced to automation. And I had realized when I was in college that a fourth industrial revolution would happen. Moore's law tells us, we know that this will happen, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're in the fifth industrial revolution now, although there's a debate. I don't think there's a debate. I think AI is the fifth industrial revolution, generative AI, not just artificial intelligence in general. And I said, when Industry 4 happens, that'll be my opportunity to help revitalize manufacturing in the United States and save and create middle-class jobs. And honestly, I'll be straight with you. I believe God put me in a very specific place in 2020, introduced me to automation, and showed me my path. So I went back to school, became a double E, and then I literally built my first unified namespace in 2005 using Microsoft Excel, Data Highway Plus, Dynamic Data Exchange is how I built the first UNS, and I built it in a salt mine in upstate New York. The reason I haven't given up, I've done it again and again and again. I've done it as a consultant and working for the end user, and it's the architecture I've used my entire career and just have mastered it. When I was introduced to Arlen in 2014, and he did that presentation at ICC in 2014, and MQTT became the protocol upon which UNS started being built. That started happening in 2014. Up until 2014, it was a whole host of other protocols that we were using. However, every time someone's asked me that question, I've said, this is my calling. My path to helping save and create middle-class jobs in the U.S. to build up the middle class is through manufacturing. So I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I guess, how did you, for me, again, I love the industry, right? I think a lot of people are swayed maybe by the financial state of other, I want to say, industries, but ultimately, look, I think we have really smart people. I had a really long conversation with Brian, right, who's one of the systems integrators exhibiting, and I think he's really pushing not only because of financial incentives, but also because of what's coming into the future. So really smart people, I think, making really good decisions and driving what I think was the foundation of the North American market. And ultimately, I really resonate with that vision.
Yeah, so, Brian Pryby of Mock Controls, by the way, he's working with Trent Christopher from, is it 4.0 Hero is the name of his company?
Hero, yes.
And then Dustin Symes' company out of Alberta, I think it's JLP Solutions.
I think it's JPI. I
JPI,
don't know.
there you go.
Dustin's going to be really upset. He gave me a hat. I should be wearing the hat right now, Dustin. I apologize.
So the three of them worked together on the Mock Controls booth, which, by the way, is incredible. They did a absolutely phenomenal job. And I actually made a point in my keynote to say, if you better go check out Mock Controls, what they did. And Brian Pryby, he is the chairman of our advisory board for the Industry 4 community. He's all in, a wonderful guy, love him to death.
And if we can just shout out Brian and what those guys did, what I love of what they did is it's the first, 12 to 16 weeks of what you should do, how you should go through the process of collecting data. We have a ton of amazing solutions. Here, we've got people talking about in the industrial data ops, we're talking about at huge scale, huge enterprise. We've got people on the integrator side showing the best things that they've ever put together, cherry picking the best solutions and what that looks like. And we've got 4 guys, 5 guys over there in that booth doing the down and dirty work. And at least we know that is the hard part.
Right. They're doing the part that's most important during that first 12 to 16
100%.
weeks. So, for example, for those of you who are listening, I got a special treat for you. You can go to my LinkedIn right now.
Okay.
The latest post I just put on there, I dropped a link in that post. It is actually access to a HTML5 dashboard that Tatsoft developed.
Okay.
That is actually integrated directly to the live Virtual Factory Unified Namespace right now. So you can go and click on that link. It'll launch in a web browser, and you'll be able to navigate the unified namespace in real time. You're going to be able to see all the namespaces that all 36 vendors are publishing back in. We have a touch screen over here at the show, but you'll be able to see if you look at the underlying data model, which is enterprise, Dallas, and then press, lamb, slit, and bag. That's what they were given. They were given that underlying core unified namespace, which was the virtual factory. And then all of the other namespaces house the data that they generated for their proofs of concept. The ProveIt is they are building a POC that is representative of a typical 12 to 16 week proof of concept for this manufacturer. So think about what happened here. The people who own the plant that we're using this virtual factory for, they actually are here.
Yes.
And they're able to see.
That is amazing. I didn't realize until you had mentioned that they're like here sitting next to you or here somewhere in the audience.
No one knows. They don't want anyone to know who they are.
Yeah.
They're watching
silent judges. Are they gonna
They're watching every single presentation.
Yeah.
And they're going to every single booth.
Yep.
And essentially what all these vendors are doing is auditioning for a project in their plant using their real data. Now, the data has been abstracted. All the IP has been extracted out of it. But the raw events, the structure, like the raw events from the machine, from the motion controls, those are all real. I mean, the job jacket number is real. All that stuff's real, but it's everything. There's no intellectual property in the namespace.
Absolutely. I guess a couple of comments for the people who aren't here. And I was telling Walker we're a little bit early. I don't know how many people are going to be on. And he's like, yeah, there are 700 people who would probably be watching live, but they're all here walking around. We do have Courtney Fernandez and Zach Scriven. Those guys are in the comments. Hey, guys, come and wave like live in the booth. Just go stick your hand over or something like that. So I would say to the Tatsoft point, we just had him here. We weren't live, but we just had him here. And I think it was Mark had his laptop open and he was going and clicking through. He's like, and this is the Litmus demo, and this is the Rexroth demo, and this is a couple of others. And yeah, I can just easily go ahead and pop in and go do all of those things. That is absolutely amazing. And to the and for the vendors next year, let me just briefly recap. I haven't seen a lot of the presentations because we've been here and we've been talking to everyone. Tulip had an amazing. I guess I'll be honest, Walker. I wasn't surprised at all because I've seen Eric at Ops Calling, and I know exactly what to expect. And it was 100%. Like it was better put together and articulated than what I expected. But there are probably half to 2/3 of these vendors that I expect bare minimum they're going to knock it out of the park. And if they don't knock it out of the park, it's a disappointment. So those guys did an amazing job. And I think you made the comment of those guys are going to be here to go talk about what those interfaces and dashboards look like.
In fact, the client told us and everybody that what Tulip showed us is something we need.
Yes.
And they want to have a conversation.
Oh, 100%.
So, and I mean, and if you think about it, I mean, I will say this, Mark, it's free. Is it Friedman or Freeman?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know Mark personally.
All right. So Mark is the developer at Tulip who built the demo. Eric Marindet is, I think he's the officer in charge of product development now, right?
I think
he's a big wig.
And
Eric's the, he's Eric's the guy Eric and Mark both get it, and
Yeah.
and Natan Linder, who is the CEO and the founder, he gets it. Operations Calling You, which you already referred to, is one of my favorite conferences. They've done it 2 years. I've had a chance to speak both times, and it's a phenomenal show. Operations Calling was the first show I ever went to where the vendors were connected together.
100%. I loved that. That was fantastic. I was there for the first one. You and I saw each other at the first one, and I'm like, this is going to be something special.
That's a great idea.
Need to be here. Yes.
And so we took that idea and we changed it. We modified it and said, well, we're going to have them connected together. So they had a rule where you had to be connected to at least one other vendor.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so what we said was we're going to connect all the vendors together.
Yes.
On one common infrastructure. Our virtual factory sits in the ballroom. You know what I mean? Like everyone gets to see it on the floor and it's clustered in the cloud. We're doing 50 million messages an hour right now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think it's something like 3,600 connections.
Yeah.
So we got 3,600 connections in the virtual factory, 50 million messages. Yeah. And HiveMQ's running like nothing.
It is. I love the balancing. I've talked to a couple of vendors that they have done some amount of insight on-prem and cloud balancing for a variety of reasons to make sure that there were going to be no bog downs during their live presentations. But I am, again, shocked in an impressively good way how good everything is, how good everything is working. Yeah. Going in, you've seen them. You've seen the development. Yeah. I wasn't sure. I told Vlad, I'm like, Vlad, it's going to be amazing because I don't really know what to expect. I know a bunch of these guys are going to deliver something amazing, but you don't know until you show up.
Well, let's make no mistake. There are vendors here who dropped the ball.
Yes.
I mean, there's no way around it. Obviously, they paid to be here, so I'm not going to. What I have told the audience is, here's my assessment.
Yep.
And you and I are in agreement. 20 of them just slayed it.
Yep.
20 of the 36 slayed it. Another 10 did an excellent job. Yep. So another 10 are great to excellent.
Yes.
And then 4 to 6 are, they're going to feel embarrassed when the show is done.
Yep.
And I think that's a good distribution. I think if everybody hit a home run, we made it way too easy.
I agree.
We made it way too easy if everybody hit a home run. And we made it hard on them. I mean, just because a vendor has egg on their face doesn't mean that they're that they have shitty products. We made it hard. I mean, we did make it hard on them. But I had conversations with, Arlen Nipper and Jeff Nepper, the guys at Flow, and, Travis Cox and everybody, the guys that have been like in that core, they've been in the crew for the last 10 years, 12 years. This is old hat for them. It's this was easy. It's like, it wasn't that hard. But we have to be honest, the market has evolved in the last 4 years, and you got players here at this show that we wouldn't have described as Industry 4 players 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right. And so kudos to them that they signed up for this challenge. We had to turn away 40 vendors. We had 76 vendors who wanted to sponsor. We had 36 spots. We had 35 spots. We added Google at the end because we wanted Google from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just couldn't connect with Google Cloud. And then they reached out. And by the way, Google did a mind-blowing presentation. They really did. But it landed really soft because of the way it was presented.
Yes, and that's what I've told people. Is that you can have the hardcore nerdiest engineers, you can have the best solution, but you have 20 to 30 minutes, right? You need to go articulate that. And I think we'll have people who do amazing things that will be judged better or worse based upon their presentation.
Their delivery, exactly.
Which is another part of what I love, right? Like they're in front of 700 people who are the harshest critics in the entire world.
By the way, I said that. I said, listen, some of you do not know this audience.
Yes.
And believe me, they are not. We have a polling system.
Yeah.
So,
those are tough questions. Like the questions that they want to ask the vendors, like very good questions. Like the ones I've seen are very good questions. But man, that is you're sitting in a director level. You're sitting in with a top engineer, and they're just hammering you with the most technical or uncomfortable questions.
And you're able to ask the question anonymously.
Yes.
So you have there's 800 and
there's still votes, right?
I know there's 600 and there's 687 attendees right now. We have 747 people on the floor, including all the staff and everything. So you have 600 people in every presentation. Because at any given time, we got 80 out here in the booths and stuff. All right. there's a QR code that they scan, the audience scans, and then they're able to ask questions, and then the MC comes up during the Q&A.
Yeah.
And based on how people upvote questions, the MC has to answer the top voted question. And they are tough questions. They are questions, for example, like, when do I use Mosquito Pro? Tell me why I should use Mosquito Pro and not HiveMQ.
Yep.
And they're asking Philip from Sedalo to say why it is you should use his product and not the competitors.
Absolutely.
Everybody's asking him, how are you better than Ignition or Hyper?
Yes.
Like, these are tough questions they're having to answer in front of everybody, and the MC is not letting them off the hook.
No, and you shouldn't. Like, if you're going to get up on the stage, and anyone who's going to get up on the stage next year should know, I mean, the questions are going to get harder next year, right? Well, like, people are going to do more research. People are going to know the products and the competitors. They're going to be like, oh, I can force these guys to say what are the pluses and minuses against, your 2 or 3 direct competitors who are sitting out here and maybe haven't gone yet. Absolutely. No, I love the questions. This is what we need. This is the better than the best version that I could have hoped for this conference.
And let me ask you that question. You guys obviously I had expectations showing up, and just so we lay it out here, this is my vision. I put up the money.
Yep.
I articulated the vision, and then I basically said, anything over $250,000 I have to approve. So any individual line item, any individual line item over $250K, I have to approve.
Yep.
And then I wrote all the technical documents. I built the infrastructure. I tested the vendors.
Yes.
But my team, led by Tanya, who's my, one of our, my ex-wife, and she's actually the conference director.
She's killing it.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have to tell anyone that, anyone who's here, but Tanya is absolutely killing it.
So, and she has a huge team around her. I mean, I think there are some 60 people in support.
Oh yeah.
We had a steering committee that Flow Software was part of. That Jeff Nepper was a member of that steering committee. That it represented the vendors. When I got here, I didn't know. I knew the layout. I had seen an overview. That's it. I didn't know anything. Okay, so I had my own expectations. You guys had your own expectations. Be honest. What were your thoughts when you first got here?
Tough question. So I guess I'll take that first.
I was going to say Vlad go first. Otherwise, Walker and Dave are just going to go back and forth.
Look, I think obviously the venue is great, right? I think there's nothing to be said about the venue, about the setup. I think that the main emphasis of UNS and about ProveIt is around data, right? So I think for me, architecture was sort of the cornerstone of the presentations, right? And I was going to say that to continue the train of thought of the previous comments. For me, real data is extremely important, right? I don't want to see a vendor create a virtual factory that is perfect, that is spitting out data on a very regular interval. So to me, I want to see as an end user, do you know the pain points that I'm actually experiencing, right? It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be organized the way you want. It's going to be across different systems in different formats. So to me, the vendors need to come in with a way to understand the data first and foremost, right? So analyze the data, look at it, and then figure out how your solution fits into that data, right? Not into a simulated environment that they've put into the UNS and then reabsorbed back to themselves. And then ultimately all the questions that you've asked, right? How much does it cost? What is the labor? Like, I want full transparency in order to compare apples to apples.
And some people have done a good job.
Yes. And some didn't, right? And again, you have different comments, right? And I will give them some leeway, right? Because if I'm a hardware provider,
Vlad's nicer than I am. I would not.
Well, it's difficult to showcase something like a PLC absorbing MES type of data, right? I think you can get very creative, but that creativity starts to blur that line. Whereas, like, you're creating data from a factory that you've simulated multiple times and just kind of reabsorbing it. So I think on that side, I really like the fact that you've cracked the whip on them, and I haven't seen it behind the stage. But ultimately, that's what I think the community is looking to see. And in order to make that comparison, I feel like that's the only way.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, I think that's good. I've got some answers. Before we do, we've got some folks in the comments. As I said, Courtney, Zach, we've got Yuri and John saying they're walking in Bravo Walker. We've got a LinkedIn user who I can't see because of preferences saying, could we say so far HiveMQ is the winner with Pulse? And Allison from Hive is saying, thank you, Nick, right? Favorite comment of the day. My comment is the people here in the community are winners, right? Like,
absolutely.
The people here who get to go watch this, everyone at home who gets to go watch the video recaps, and like, we're the winners. everyone can go decide if you don't know Hive and suddenly Hive MQ is that much better. For me, I think some of my feelings, as I said earlier, are a bit tempered because I know so many of the vendors, because I sit in so many of these things, because I love the technology and apparently spend an awful lot of time looking at different technologies, so I don't have to go build everything from scratch. So from that, I think everyone here are winners.
And I would say this: has every presentation blown me away? No, absolutely not. We have been very organic.
Yep.
I mean, I literally, there's 600 people in that room. It's an enormous ballroom. We have 3 screens, 2 stages. It is impressive. It's kind of overwhelming when you walk in there and you're like, whoa, this is big time. The production quality, we have a producer, stage manager, the whole, because I'm the keynote, I guess I'm lucky I get to carry a mic and I get to just ask questions of the vendors when they're on stage. So when I'm in the audience, I can just turn a mic on and ask them a question. I'll sidetrack them, and we're doing it organically, and I'm speaking on behalf of the audience before they ask their questions through the app. And I want to highlight 2 presentations specifically, but that doesn't mean that I think these are the only 2 great ones, because I haven't seen a bad presentation yet.
Agreed.
I haven't seen the bad one on stage yet. I have seen bad at a booth. Okay, in a bronze. But there are 2 that just absolutely stand out. I'll go in no particular order. Let's start with Concept Reply and Snowflake. Remus Pop absolutely fucking slayed it, dude. Absolutely slayed his presentation. Really demonstrated the power of Snowflake's AI capabilities. He was totally transparent in his pricing. Exactly the number of man hours. He actually line itemed the man hours, and then he actually broke out his actual cloud costs. $660 something total, all in for the solution that was on the screen. The customer knew, if I want that, it's going to cost me $57K in capital and $600 a month in. And if
that's what I want to see. I don't want to see a website. Go see the website.
And the function was incredible. I mean, he just built a completely functional. Basically, he was using a data management platform in Snowflake, and then I can't remember Snowflake's AI product. I don't remember all the names, but it basically captures the stream, and then you can ask for industrial insights on the data stream in using natural language. Very, very impressive presentation. Actually, I'm going to give 3. Number 2, obviously, Tulip. Tulip, I mean, if you were going to score these on a scale of 1 to 5, Remus got a 5, Tulip got a 5. I came in on the Tulip. If you guys, I came in and gave my feedback on Tulip during their podcast. So, and I would say the third one, Litmus, really, we've had a couple of amazing product announcements. They've dropped new products here. Litmus dropped a new product here that was like a whoa. Was like a big whoa in terms of the nuts and bolts of it. Is they have a new AI tool inside of Litmus Edge that essentially can do advanced reasoning through function blocks. So I can go condition into a function block, advanced reasoning. And you can give it an instruction. I want you to find the lowest asset with the worst OEE where it ran greater than 8 hours. And then from that result set, pass it to another function block that's going to do additional advanced reasoning with AI. And the implication was that when I looked at that, I said, this right here is the beginning of us taking SOPs, which are administrative controls. Those are human beings having to oversee, ensure that another human being does what's in the standard operating procedure manual. And we're able to convert that from administrative control to an engineering control. We can actually use, so we can go from a 60% success rate that they're going to follow this procedure to a 99.9999% because we're using artificial intelligence to execute the procedure. We're not asking the human being. It's absolutely overwhelming. There are 3 really mind blowers. So I would say those 5. Google Cloud's presentation did a very similar, but showing you, walking you through the process of how you really leverage generative AI with industrial data and using the data in the virtual factory. So when they said which press has the lowest OEE, if anybody's asking that question, it's all returning the same press, because what we did was we recorded the plant. We literally recorded the live data for 1 hour. The plant just plays over and over and over again for 1 hour at a time in the broker and in the database. And it's always press 103. So if it gives you an answer that's other than press 103, then we know that the chatbot didn't work right. So there have been some incredible presentations. I think Dell Native Edge really wowed some people. Litmus really wowed some people because they showed how to do enterprise deployment.
Absolutely.
So they actually said, we're going to assume this plant's already done. So the problem this customer has is they have a facility in Austin.
Yes.
And we're going to deploy to their new facility in Austin what's already here in Dallas in the virtual factory. And they nailed it. They actually did, I think, three plants, right?
I'm surprised they only stopped at 3.
Me too.
So knowing the team as well as I do, and I've known them for 3 years, maybe 4 years at this point, I'm surprised they stopped at 3.
Yeah.
Someone must have come in and said, no, guys, we can't go any further than this. But no. So of those, the ones you said that just knocked it out of the park, those are definitely on my list of I expect some of the best presentations, right? And I think I've told it to
especially Litmus and Tulip. If they had under-delivered, it would have been a shock.
No, I agree. I mean, knowing Dave McMorrin, who was up there, and Vatsal, and knowing the product team over at Litmus, those guys must be, I say it all the time, Vish and Parth must be the hardest working guys. I don't even know how they sleep.
I don't think Parth does.
So funny side tangent, and then I will go tell you my thoughts. I was out at their San Jose office end of August, beginning of September. They had just released Litmus UNS. I think that was a Parth. Vish was talking about a whole bunch of drivers that he was building and like putting onto a for free or for very limited amount of money to go add it in. And I'm like, yeah, Vish, you must have dozens of drivers. Walker, I'm pretty sure he had like north of 1,000, and I have never insulted someone and like their entire extended family as I did when I said that to Vish. And again, my man, I apologize for thinking that you slept for the previous 6 months and you're not just building drivers and going through manuals to build drivers. So no, I expect like absolute perfection from all of those, just knowing those guys as well as I do. And I basically told this to all of their faces.
And their storytelling is incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'll give you two, before you give your feedback, I'll give you two pieces of it. I'll tell you two things that I've been telling every vendor.
Yeah.
I've spent time walking around trying to spend, it's been overwhelming. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, I nearly teared up in my keynote. My voice cracked. I threw my presentation out the night before, and then I riffed a 90 minute to 2 hour keynote. Straight from the heart. And I feel like this is the culmination of my life's work. But let me make something perfectly clear. Like, the community did this. You already touched on it, and I'm not playing lip service to this. Without the community, I'm just a guy with a big mouth and an opinion, right? I mean, that's it. I mean,
sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, it's the community. I say, people say all the time, Walker, how did you build such a huge following? And I say, honestly, I'm just myself. Zach asks me really good questions. And I say things that other people think. That's it. And it's not, I'm making them think what I say. I'm saying the thing they already think, because the number one thing that people are saying is, I came across your videos and I'm like, this is a guy who gets it. They weren't like, oh, this is a guy who convinced me I should do this.
Oh, 100%.
It's like, I already thought this. So the community members are like, I already thought this. It's just, he may have put it in a way that I understood clearer. You know how many community members? I had the 14th person now tell me that they took vacation.
Oh, wow.
Bought their own ticket. Their own airfare. They're to pay for their own hotel to come to this show, because there's no way they're missing. 3 of them are from different countries. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, so we'll say 2 countries. New Zealand and Sweden.
Wow.
Yes.
Those are long flights.
And Puerto Rico, and then 13 people total.
Honestly, for me, that's been also a huge selling point of the conference, right? And I cannot stress this enough. If you go somewhere else, right, and you talk to the executives attending, a lot of times you will get the comment of, well, my company sent me here and I'm just like looking around. That is not the case here. Every single person that I've talked to wants to learn, wants to understand the solution. So maybe to throw a complicated question at you, Walker, maybe what kind of feedback are you getting for some of those end users looking at those presentations, maybe a little bit early at the stage, but ultimately have they made a decision? Are they telling you, hey, this is significantly better? Like, what are their takeaways? The conference is for them, right?
Really good question. So on Monday, so the conference started yesterday, Tuesday. Monday, I I spoke to the vendors
Yeah.
we did rehearsals all day.
Yep.
And I spoke with the vendors first, and I told the vendors, I can't believe I'm saying, if you are unhappy, I don't care.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
he did say that. We were there. He did say that.
I said, I do not care. Okay. My team is going to care. I do not care.
Yep.
Excuse me. I only care about the end users in this room.
Yep.
So when the end users are here, if they're unhappy, then I care.
Yep.
If 90% of the end users walk away from here and they say, holy crap, this was valuable. I know something way more today than I did on Thursday night than I did on Tuesday, then this is a win. We have 63% end users. That is unheard of. It's actually normally 60-40, 40% end users, 60% other.
Yep.
We have 63% end users. Of the 500 official tickets we sold, 413 of those are end users.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's
87,
amazing.
413. And then we have additional, there's 680 something, 689 attendees total.
Yeah.
And we sold overflow tickets.
Yeah.
500 was our goal, and we went all the way to 689.
Yeah. Well, and I guess for everyone at home, you said that we are 3 people below the legal max,
Yeah,
right?
so that including the staff, we are not allowed to have more than 750 people.
Yes.
And we have 747.
And I think you made that comment on Monday and or Tuesday, and some people say they've sold out a conference. This is a fire marshal is going to come start kicking people out.
Yes, it is. I mean, make no mistake about it. It was overwhelming when you go in there and you go, there's exactly enough chairs in here for every person at the show. That's it. There's not an extra chair.
Absolutely.
So, and we have some video shots. If you look at them, it's crazy. I mean,
it is crazy.
It's insane, and they're rapt attention.
Yes.
So this morning, I actually polled the end users who were in the room. First thing when I introduced Sandy Lauro, who was speaking. And shout out to Sandy, who gave a great keynote this morning on stress management. Emma Roloff, who talked about change management yesterday. Shout out to Emma Roloff, and a big shout out to Amy Williams and Jeff Winter. They've been invaluable as the MCs of the show. There's a whole host of other people I'd love to thank. I asked them on a scale of 1 to 5 how valuable was yesterday, and I'm going to say 90% held up 5.
Yeah.
And then I said scale of 1, who did a 4, and it was 10% did a 4. There was 1 3, and so I walked up to that guy and I said, hey, what is there anything we could do better? And he said, oh, the show's great, it's beautiful, everything's incredible. He said, but I'm disappointed that there aren't enough people here sharing enterprise class solutions. And when I ask them about their customers, they don't tell me. And I go, okay, well, I said, well, there's a reason for that. Number one, when enterprise class customers who have digitally transformed and have yielded, 60x return on their investments, that is a competitive advantage. And almost always they don't let you talk about it. So what I suggested is, if you want to hear about the big boys, the big projects, then you go talk to the individual vendors one-on-one and tell them you're willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement so that they can talk frankly with you. And I promise you, they'll do that, and they'll show you the goods. But the reason we're not doing enterprise here, so our infrastructure is enterprise class. Make no mistake about it. We're doing 50 million messages, cluster, bridging, the whole deal. And we've got 36 different companies all integrated to the same infrastructure. And we haven't had the infrastructure go down yet, knock on wood. But this is all about the first 12 to 16 weeks. Our goal was, you're going to do a proof of concept, not you're scaling across the enterprise. You're looking at an infrastructure and you're going, what can I achieve in 12 to 16 weeks of time? They got the documents on October 28th. And then I intentionally put hurdles up. I gave them the database late. Why? Because the customer sometimes gives you the database late. We gave them good data and bad data. Does the customer ever give you 100% good data?
I'm just happy when the customer gives me data.
Yeah, just you have data.
Data to start is better than most.
I need to go get the data.
Yeah. So we simulated. We didn't simulate it. This is real production data. Okay, but the issue is this client has had a UNS for 6 years. Their OEE is 88%. So there aren't a whole lot of problems I got to have solved. Right at 6 years. So we had to create some.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was we manipulated the data a little bit, but by recording them when they had an asset down. So we had some assets that were down, which drove the OEE down.
Yep.
And then we intentionally wanted them to fix specific issues within that 1 hour window.
Mm-hmm.
All the feedback has been phenomenal. When I told them, hey, it's 12 to 16 weeks, we're going to do something bigger next year. Next year, the whole show will be centered around phase one
Mm-hmm.
of a production engagement. So
Yep.
that's
Ooh,
the
okay.
thing that happens after the proof of concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we start getting into enterprise scale.
Yep.
You'll see something bigger next year. So
I was going to ask you that exact question, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like, what are some of the takeaways? I know that you mentioned in 2 weeks you were going to start working on the next conference.
Yeah.
So that is already, I'm assuming, confirmed. Could you maybe give us a little bit more details as you think about that?
it is 99% confirmed. Here, is there an outside chance that we wouldn't do a show next year? I'm sure there in some universe it's possible. The feedback has been overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you know, I'm not here to promote the show. I'm here to educate. I'm here to, for those of you who couldn't make it, I'm here to educate.
Absolutely.
The feedback has been simply overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
It's moved me to the core. It has humbled me in a way I haven't been humbled in a very long time. Here's what we want to do next year.
Mm-hmm.
So some things that we would do differently. We had a network infrastructure day on Sunday.
Yep.
So that was us here with the venue putting in the virtual factory.
Mm-hmm.
We were here all day long doing that, testing the network, the whole deal. I mean, literally, we're the core.
Mm-hmm.
So the venue, Weston Galleria, I am piped directly to the fiber core.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the network that all the vendors are on is the local network. I am passing via a dry LAN back to the venue. And the Wi-Fi is going back to our core.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you don't see that at a conference. You're on the venue's network.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly almost want to eliminate the architecture of the conference center, right? I would be worried.
Agreed.
I mean, that's what they basically did, right?
It's basically what we did.
Yes.
And we're connected to two fiber cores. So they have two different service providers here at the venue. It was one of the criteria for us to select them because we have the balancers running in the cloud infrastructure, and then we have the local broker running. So we have our plant broker running here. We have our enterprise broker in the cloud. Mm-hmm. They're clustered in the cloud, and there's a load balancer in front of them. Mm-hmm. And then we have a bridge between our local broker and the balancer. So
Absolutely.
If something is published at the enterprise level, it shows up at the plant. If something's published here at the virtual factory, it goes actually up to the enterprise as well. Here's what we'd like to do. What we would have done, we did network Sunday. We did vendor setup on Monday. The show is yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yep.
Yesterday was the longest day of the show. We didn't get out of here until what, 8:15, 8:30?
That was earlier than we saw you and said goodbye last night.
The fireside chat. We were done with the fireside chat at 7:45, 8 o'clock. That was, by the way, phenomenal discussion. Shout out to Jonathan Wise and Matt Paris and Arlen Nipper and Jeff Nepper who emceed, and I was the other one on the panel. That was an incredible conversation on standards. But yesterday was a really long day. What we would have done is would have had Monday an exhibit day.
So Monday was kind of an exhibit day for us. We were here on Monday while the vendors were setting up. We had no plans to go hang out other than to check out the booth and make sure all the setup was good. We were here for 10 hours. It was a very long first day for us, and honestly, 100% it was fantastic. I loved it. Kind of a couple of my comments of feedback, and I'm going to give you very similar feedback that I gave to like Maddie and the ops calling folks first time around. Is the only negative I have is there's no way I could do everything, right? And that was Maddie. That was her comment. Her goal for Ops Calling 1 was we want to give you too many things to do that you're never bored and you always want to come back for more. And even if we weren't here podcasting, there would be like 3 times as many things to do as there were hours in the day. So the only negative feedback is that everything is too good and I want to do too much. But overall, I was blown away. Coming in, it didn't feel like it was the first time you guys had done an event.
And that's the predominant feedback we've gotten. That really goes to the team. It goes to the steering committee. It goes to Tanya. Tanya's leadership. I think the team are going to take her on vacation after. Will she want to see them after this? I mean, I can tell you. I'm not surprised. This is kind of her thing. She's done huge huge events
Yep.
like this before, but never a conference.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
she just took these other huge events she's planned, and she used those same skills here. That was actually an advantage for us.
Mm-hmm.
So there were things that we did
Mm-hmm.
that the vendors have told us this is the best show they've ever been to themselves, and
Absolutely.
the treatment that we've given
Mhm.
them. So we paid for all their electricity.
Yep.
We paid for all of their internet
Mhm.
access. They were shocked. They couldn't believe that was included
Yeah.
in their sponsorship, because apparently at shows they got to pay for electricity and internet separately.
That stuff gets
And the
really
tables.
expensive
We
really
want a table.
fast.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
expensive,
Yeah.
very fast.
And we didn't. That was all covered by
Yep.
the ProveIt show.
Mhm.
Everybody has said it's been phenomenal. The big thing, talking to the vendors,
Mhm.
are they getting business opportunities here? You bet your ass. And they all said, and the word I keep hearing is fully qualified leads.
Absolutely.
That's what they're saying. Fully qualified leads. People are coming here. They already know my product. They're
Mhm.
not kicking the tires.
Yep.
They've gone like a menu out here,
Yes.
and they've gone, all right, watch the presentation. I want that thing and that thing and that thing.
Yep.
Let's talk business.
Yep. They're
That's
here
what's
to find solutions,
Yeah.
to find people who can help them. Or the third bucket I've gotten are people just confirming that what they've built
Yeah.
and architected is the right
A
build,
lot
is
of
the
people,
right
a
architecture.
lot of people have waited to start some new initiative
Mhm.
because they want to confirm what they planned. Just
Absolutely.
like you said,
Absolutely.
at this show.
And,
Yeah.
and I've had so many awesome conversations. And if anyone is listening and is here, if I can help you, if I can help introduce you to someone, if I can help direct you in whichever direction you need to go, I am always happy to go ahead and give that help. Again, I'm just so happy that there are so many people here.
Yeah.
I love talking about the hard problems, and there are almost only hard problems here on the vendor side.
Only a couple of vendors, I think, picked easy problems.
Yeah.
There were a couple that were easy that
Yeah.
I thought, man, you could have done,
Mhm.
but only a couple. The vast majority actually have gone way above and beyond. I think,
Yes.
2/3 for sure of what I've seen. Back to your point, though, I wanted to answer what to do different next year.
Mhm.
We're 99% we're doing this,
Yep.
and we'll plan in 2 weeks. We'll announce it.
Mhm.
We'll do a debrief with all the vendors and all that jazz. Dell and Google. I have to give a shout out to the title sponsors.
Absolutely.
Dell and Google. So Dell Smart Manufacturing, led
Mhm.
by Todd Edmonds.
Mhm.
That includes the group that does Dell Native Edge.
Yep.
Invaluable partners.
Mhm.
I mean, I cannot overstate how incredible that group, led by Todd and Ryan Fournier, have been.
Mhm.
They are all in on this. They believe in what ProveIt is all about.
Absolutely.
Number 2, Google Cloud. I mean, come on. This is our first conference, and Google signs on to be a title sponsor.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, and they asked to be. We didn't go to them. They
Yeah.
called us and said, we want to be a title sponsor with you guys. And that's a testament to the community.
Absolutely.
They have been invaluable. And what they showed, Dave Pugh showed yesterday on stage, has the implications reverberate across the entire industry,
Mhm.
like that whole workflow. And we're going to post a select number of presentations will be posted
Yes.
publicly.
Mhm.
Anybody who attended here is going to get all the recordings from every presentation. So if they missed one,
Good.
you're gonna get a recording. Any attendee is going to get all the recordings. So what will we do next year?
If
We're
first, if I can just also thank Dell and GCP. I love seeing you guys at US shows. I see you so much in 2,000 square meter, 20,000 square foot booths all over Europe, where you guys you're huge, right? You've got all of your solutions. Thank you guys for coming here to a US based show. I mean, this show in particular, but US shows. I definitely want to see more of you guys, because I know the community wants to see more of your solutions. Like before this, I knew a bit about Dell on that side, mostly on the infrastructure, mostly on the IoT side. But like, if I hadn't been at Hanover, if I hadn't been at these major Euro shows, you just don't see that. So I'm really happy to see them coming, and I hope this is like the beginning of more of that in the future.
So next year we'll go, and I agree with you 100%. We're going to go 4 days. Okay. 4 days for sure. 3 days is it's just not enough. We need 4 days where one of the days could be a little shorter.
Yes.
I mean, yesterday was a very long day. It was worth it, but it was a long day.
100%.
50 vendors. We have 36 here. We had 76 requests to be here.
Yep.
And we only allowed 36. We'll go 50 vendors, and we'll cap the attendees at 1,000.
Yeah.
So we're going to go bigger next year. Probably same time of year. I mean, I don't see a reason to change the time of year. It kind of works.
Yep.
I really think we should do this before Hanover. I think
100%,
it should be before Hanover. And there was one other thing I wanted to. I wanted to answer a question.
Mm-hmm.
The infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be remiss. The virtual factory infrastructure is made up of HiveMQ,
Mm-hmm.
enterprise class, Portainer.
Mm-hmm.
Without Portainer, this wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I mean, Portainer is how we are managing all the infrastructure. It's how all the simulators and the OPC server and all that stuff. I mean, we wrote the OPC server that we're using. Okay, so Portainer is a core element. Obviously, Ignition is a critical component in our infrastructure. HiByte is a critical component in our infrastructure. So those four things play the biggest role in our infrastructure. HiveMQ obviously being the core.
Yes,
being the core. And they announced Pulse, which probably the biggest announcement of the whole show.
Absolutely.
I mean, literally, it's like, hey, world, HiveMQ is going into data management, and the broker's just going to be a data feeder into data management. Pulse is our future.
Yes.
That's a huge announcement.
That is a huge announcement.
Huge announcement.
That is, we will have to go talk some more about them. Walker, we're already over on time.
Yeah.
We're already over on time. I guess I want to say Vlad and I are super happy to be here.
Any questions in the chat that we want to?
We've got a ton of comments in the chat, mostly just thanking you, thanking everyone, shouting out Hive. Sasha's in the comments. Sasha, I hope Toronto is warmer than Dallas. It's a little cold here in Dallas. For the shout outs to the No Sleep team of Vish and Parth over at Litmus. Absolutely. I'm sure there are other things we will get back to you guys on, other questions, comments. We'll go ahead and be sure to tag everything that we can possibly tag in here. Walker, before I ask if you've got any kind of final thoughts, of course, you're always welcome to be here on the show. We're always happy to have you.
Awesome.
I feel like we see you all the time, but trying to find schedules or 90 minutes to go log us down.
I've reached out a few times.
Yeah, Dave and I Dave and I. So a little known fact: I don't actually manage my LinkedIn DMs.
That's not a surprise at all.
So if you ever want, Instagram is the best place to DM me directly, or
you probably shouldn't tell people.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't tell you.
Now we won't be doing those accounts either,
because I'm the only one who manages those. It's my it's my personal X and Instagram. There's a team that does all the other social media, because as you guys are probably aware,
100%.
I couldn't possibly answer all the messages I get from LinkedIn. Or from YouTube comments, or email. I don't even manage my own email anymore. I will say this: Dave and I are every year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. We're at the exact same show. Get invited to the exact same show, and it's always like, hey, brother, we need to do a podcast together.
Absolutely.
It's like every show we're like, we need to do a podcast. So on the first day, we're like, you guys want to do a podcast together? It's like, yes, let's do it. We've been saying do this.
Absolutely. No. And I feel we only get each other to say hi, and then I don't see you for the rest
It's always
of the show.
the mixer.
It's always the mixer.
It
is always the mixer.
They bring us to the mixer. We get to see each other, and then I don't know if you guys know how, when they invite us to these shows, they bring us to go to the mixer, really, and then to commentate and give press, basically. But the mixer is where it's kind of a way of everyone getting a chance to have a conversation with us. So we get to talk to each other for 5 minutes. Before we wander around and take photos and shake hands with everybody. So,
absolutely. No. And so again, we're super happy to have you. You've always got an open mic with us.
Thank you.
As I told you last night privately, and as I'll say publicly, we absolutely would love to come back and be a bigger part of ProveIt 2.
100%. We will have you guys back.
And whatever that becomes into the future. Again, I think it's so important here. So important for the community. And again, it's somehow even better than my biggest expectations could be.
And the automation ladies are here too, right?
They are.
Nikki's here?
Nikki and Allie and Courtney. I saw all of them. Courtney was in the comments. I don't know where I said come and say hi while we're live, but the automation ladies are here.
Yeah, I did comment on Nikki Gonzalez's post. I was like, hey, thank you for being here. I want to make sure I do get a chance to talk to them and say thank you to them. And by the way, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the feedback. The show's been profound, but honestly, this is a community show, and I'm going to part with this piece. One of the things that I was really worried about was that this was going to be like the Walker show. And we talked internally as a team. We don't want it to be the Walker show. Yes, we recognize that we leveraged my brand to get the vendors here. Right. However, we wanted this to be a community show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to put this show on again next year, 99.9%. But then what we think we want to do is over the course of the next year, make this a community entity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the ProveIt conference community entity, take the Industry 4 advisory board, put them in charge of the conference and have a subcommittee in charge of the conference, and then turn ownership of the conference over to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let me ask you maybe a question on that side. If someone's hearing that message and wants to get a bit more involved or is interested to contribute in any way from the community, how would they do it?
the best way to do it is through the Discord server. Join the Discord server, and then there is a chat in there for the ProveIt conference for the community. And just jump in and say, hey, I want to get involved. If let's say you don't want to be involved in the community conference, but what you do want to do is be involved as an advisory board member. There is a whole other channel inside of the Discord server. Believe me, we have a vibrant community in the Discord server. I made the comment. This is how we know the industry has changed. When we created the Discord server in 2020, Zach and I answered 95% of any Industry 4 question that came in, especially anything about UNS. I barely ever answer one of those questions now.
That's amazing.
You know, Mark O'Donovan, you name it, Rick Bellata, Matt Paris. There's so many names, community members who have taken the baton and have become experts in this architecture and in these strategies. And that is by far the most rewarding piece.
Absolutely.
Surprised not to see Rick here.
He was supposed to be here. He was actually supposed to be on the panel. He had to go on a ski trip that his wife absolutely did not allow him to back out of.
I think we've all been there.
Yes, exactly.
we have all been there.
It makes him a smart guy.
Yes, I was going to say definitely the right choice on Rick's part. Everyone, thank you guys so much for being here. This could go on for 10 hours. There is so many other amazing things to do. There are a couple of sessions later today. If you're at the show, I'm super excited to see Maintain X. I'm super excited to see Siemens. I've told the Siemens WinCC OA team.
Siemens is going to blow it out of the park.
I have told the OA team I'm so happy to see them here. I haven't seen them in the States in like 6 years. I'm so happy to see them here. Very excited. I think, Walker, you and I might be like two of the non-Austrians or non-Siemens employees who know what Siemens WinCC is.
That's right.
And are excited. And I said I was excited. They're like, yeah, Walker's excited. And I'm like, of course he is.
Oh, I'm absolutely excited.
So I am super excited to see this. Until next time, guys, come check us out. Feel free to comment. We will be here. We will be doing all of these things. Come say hi to us in person. If we don't see you, we'll be back next Wednesday live, 4 o'clock East Coast time. Until next time, we'll see everyone soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Benson, you guys on the Opto side have been on Manufacturing Hub. You guys have been all over the internet. But if someone is here watching ProveIt coverage and may not know who Opto 22 is, can you give the audience a little bit of an overview of who Opto 22 is and what you're here to prove, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the first part about who Opto is. We are a manufacturer of industrial automation hardware and software. We've been doing it for 50 years. The company was founded by the co-inventor of the solid-state relay, and that was 50 years ago, and all the progression we've made over the years has culminated in what we're offering here at the conference today, and we're talking about, of course, our Groove platform. That's Groove Epic and Groove Rio. And that's essentially the path we've taken. We're still primarily hardware, and the software that runs on that hardware to make it easy to use and, of course, solve automation problems. And then we also have a rich ecosystem of technology partners we work with. Many of them are here today at ProveIt. And yeah, what are we trying to prove, right?
Or I suppose, what did you prove? Because you had the first ProveIt session.
I was the first one. I had to break the ice, and following Walker Reynolds wasn't very easy to do.
No pressure.
But yeah, so what we try to do is, if you have an understanding of the background of ProveIt, the idea was that they were going to put together a virtual factory. And this virtual factory essentially makes Dorito bags and Frito-Lay bags and whatnot. But this virtual factory has this interface to it, something that's referred to as the UNS. And there's that three-letter acronym is being thrown all over the place at this conference. For those who don't know what that is, it's the unified namespace, this notion of a real-time snapshot of all of the variables within a business. And a lot of that, of course, comes from the operational side, or what we call OT. And that's where we live. We live at the edge. Our basic premise is that we know how to take things from the physical world and convert that into a digital format that software can do something interesting with. So a lot of our products are based on input-output systems, I/O modules, if you will, certainly controllers to perform real-time PLC-based control. But the most important thing are two things. Number one, how do we democratize that data? The problem we have today in a lot of the existing legacy equipment is that data gets trapped, whether it's in a PLC or some other type of system, and it's hard to extract. The second one is, and this has become of paramount importance lately, is cybersecurity. How do we protect those OT systems? Because we're hearing it all over the news, right? People are cracking into factories, or cracking into utility systems, and whether it's malware or just bringing systems down, you have to protect those systems, and you have to do it at a plant floor level. So that's our two primary things we're bringing here is, hey, let's get the data where it needs to be so that fantastic software can do something interesting with that. And that could be visualization, that could be analyzing the data, it could be simple as storing the data or historizing that data. And that's not the business that we're in. We're all about aggregating that data, putting it in a format people understand, and other software applications can understand.
If I can ask you maybe to expand a little bit more on the architecture side, right? So you mentioned obviously you are the hardware solution, but ultimately you have other partners that can live on the controller. Maybe what do those layers look like? How would you get that data out of the UNS? Can you transform the data on the controllers that go into the cloud? What is the architecture?
Yeah, indeed. Our platform is designed, let me take a step back for just a moment. Back in the 80s, we were the first ones to show it with a personal computer at an industrial trade show, because we were very big into the notion of PC-based control. And this is largely in a market that was literally owned by PLCs, Modicon PLCs, and so on. And so we've always had this engineering philosophy of using widely available CPUs, memory, true compute power at an OT level. And by virtue of that, we've always said that means that whenever we build something today, we want to make sure that it's open, extendable. You can do a lot of things that you might do with a PC, but let's be honest, nobody's going to really put a PC the way we know it on a plant floor as much as they used to. Now it's all about embedded controllers and stuff with wide operating temperature ranges and agency approvals, things like that. So that's been our focus, and as a result, these new Groove Epic systems, I say they're new, they've been around for a while, are all built on industrial hardware that we develop ourselves. Our products are actually made in the USA. I think you guys have been there to the plant in Temecula, California. So we build everything, and it means we're very vertically integrated. We do the design, we do the chip layout, we do it all. And then because that is essentially like a PC platform, it is Linux-based. So our systems are based on what's called a Yocto build of Linux. That gives us the opportunity to partner with others who can bring their own piece of the value chain and run it at the edge. For example, we have a long partnership with Inductive Automation, and we worked with them very early to develop the Ignition Edge product, this notion of being able to take a version of Ignition and run it down on the edge. And so that takes us a long way towards providing ways to normalize the data, to historize the data, to visualize the data, and also provide a lot of connectivity options to capture even more data than just the I/O signals or control signals that we're involved with. But the real push is how do we take some of that capability and get it as close to the edge as possible where the source of truth lies. And the way you do that is available CPU, available memory, and put it in an industrial enclosure, not really enclosure, but in an industrial package that can live right where that source of data is, yet still democratize it and also protect it from authorized access and so on.
Spencer, maybe as a follow-up, and I'd be curious if you're able to share some numbers as far as talking with your customers. How many of them are using maybe the Opto with just a control-based application versus having that understanding the data layer? The reason why I ask is because we're at a conference that is looking to showcase and promote more data usage, and at least my conversations are such that there's still a lot of need to upgrade, there's still a lot of need to automate, there's still a lot of need on the lower level, the interest in more data and showing will speak further. So I'm curious, maybe what do your conversations with the customers look like as far as the...
And actually, that's how we developed our content for this event. We, talking to customers, how are they using these products, and what problems are they trying to solve? And it does come down into really two different camps. The first one is something that we're all familiar with, and that's the notion of brownfield assets. These are assets that are dark assets. Nobody knows what's going on. They probably have their own proprietary control systems. They probably are blocked off in some way. And in the case of today's event, what I decided to show was the utility systems for the virtual factory. Getting clean, reliable power and dry compressed air to those machines. Because if those machines don't have power and air, guess what? They don't make anything. So that first part of the focus was brownfield, that notion of being able to connect to an existing asset, extract its data from it, and then exposing it or democratizing to other applications. The other side of that was we took a greenfield or new projects approach. And this is important because what we found from our customers, and one of the things that we think we provide uniquely to the market, is the notion of being able to have a system that can do control and I/O and HMI and data modeling and democratization of that data in a single manageable, essentially container, not a container that, I'll get to that, but in a package that allows them to quickly, easily get that stuff going and to be able to manage it at scale. Because today the problem that we hear our customers talking about all the time is, yes, you could do this today with the products that are on the market, but largely what it means is you're grabbing a bunch of different components and having to stitch them together. So you've got your control, then you've got your OPC server, and then you got your HMI, and then maybe there's a gateway or a firewall before it gets on to upper level systems, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. What if we could collapse all of those different technologies into a single manageable device? I sometimes use this, and I think I may have on your podcast previously, the flip phone versus smartphone analogy. We all love flip phones because they're really good at two things: making a phone call and sending an occasional text. And your traditional PLC is very good at control and I/O signal handling. But once you start to get beyond that and you want to do more things and you start adding more components to make it happen, that's where things get complex, they get brittle, they're very difficult to manage, and they're largely unsecure. Getting back to that analogy, think about your smartphone today. It still makes a phone call, it still can certainly send a text, but do you carry a camera around with you much anymore, or a music player, or a video camera, or all the other things that now we rely on a single device to be able to tackle all these types of problems that we need to solve, whether it's staying in touch with our kids, or seeing what's latest on the news, or watch a Manufacturing Hub podcast, or listen to one, right? So that's the idea, is how can we simplify that tech stack? And that's essentially what we've been able to do, because on a Linux-based platform, we've got a whole bunch of capabilities. Or at the end of the day, we're still at the heart of this thing, a PLC. Real-time Linux extensions to make sure that is numbered, just like a phone, it's got to make a phone call. But what you can start doing around that to be able to, again, democratize data, protect things, provide some local visualization, that's essentially what we did both for brownfield and for greenfield applications.
I love that. I guess I want to talk a bit more about the tech stack, right? So Benson, most of my early experience with the Groove platform was we've got legacy PLCs. The PLCs are working. We're not going to go touch those PLCs. We'll go put a Groove Epic or a Groove Rio somewhere above it. We'll go collect the information from there. And then we'll go do all of the things that you just said, right? It allows us to make it more secure. It gives us some more of that edge processing. It gives us all of those applications on the edge, or the edge above the edge, if you will. However we would like to go say that. I want to know, is that still, when we're talking about UNS, are you still seeing lots of groups? It's like, I imagine lots of brownfield groups are using it in that application.
They are.
Is that where you're seeing most of the applications? Or if not, I'd love to know more about some of the other applications you're seeing.
No, for the most part, we're still what we believe the world's best I/O company. All of our I/O modules are guaranteed for life. So people count on us for reliability, mission critical, and made in the USA. But you still need to do so much more.
Yes.
And when you're trying to accomplish that, again, with pieces and parts, it becomes pretty challenging. But to your point, we have had customers who take our, say, Groove Epic processor with no I/O and use that. And then you might be saying, hang on, now it's like an IPC. You could make a pretty good argument for that. In fact, Arlen Nipper himself has stated publicly, if you want an IPC, you got to use a Groove Epic. I don't necessarily, I love Arlen, and I'd love it but we're not an IPC company. We provide a lot of different capabilities, and IPCs are great, but they're another thing that you got to manage. And in many cases, IPCs tend to cross into the next domain, the IT domain. Now you're dealing with operating system upgrades. You're making sure that you're configuring that system to do all the tasks you want it to do. So what we tried to do with the Groove Epic and Groove Rio platform is make that management easy. Really focused very deeply on an OT type person.
Okay.
But at the same time, and this is important, we'll give them the OT tooling so they can get their jobs done quickly from an OT perspective, but that device has got to be a first-class citizen on an IT network too. How many times have any of your listeners called their IT department and said, hey, I need a static IP for this gizmo I'm going to put on your network? You know what you've done when you asked for that? You've shifted the responsibility for that device on their network to them. And they hate that. And that's why a lot of people in OT call IT the Department of No. And that's for a good reason. Part of what we tried to do is make sure that while we have all this easy OT tooling on these devices to do all the tasks we're talking about here, they have to be first-class citizens on the IT network and get those kind of approvals that if I want to put this thing on the network, IT knows how to manage it, they know where it is, they know it has a proper certs, it has a firewall, all that stuff is built in. It does get used as IPC, but yeah.
I do want to re-emphasize that speaking of that IT-OT conflict on the cybersecurity side, my experience, and I would assume yours as well, has been that on the OT side, cybersecurity is a lot less understood, right? But despite some of the issues we've seen recently, I still feel that a lot of the engineers are not as concerned as they probably should be. So,
Agreed.
and I've personally had conversations at the VP level on the IT side who are pushing to bolster up cybersecurity, but usually it's either we put some firewalls or we're upgrading Windows 98 machines. That's the reality of many facilities. But
It sure is.
maybe how would you sell some of the features maybe of the Opto as cybersecurity capable device or something that is a little bit goes beyond than some of the other?
Yeah, and so it starts with making sure that the technologies that are employed on this so-called black box, that T guys are like, hey, we use these all the time, is making sure that we're embedding the technologies that make them, again, that first-class system on the IT side. And that's the key thing. And then, the next part is, okay, how's an OT guy going to be able to manage this? And we make the tools easy for them to do that. And, back to your question, if there's an executive or someone saying, well, how do we find the right devices that kind of blend those two technologies together? You might first go to an IPC, which is great. Just know that you're going to need to manage that device. We just try to make it where it lands in both camps. And you can't please all people, but you can do a lot of things that makes it a lot easier for both sides to actually be singing from the same sheet of music. That's part of the problem we have is that it's a language barrier. OT has a different set of requirements than IT, but we have to work together if we're going to move forward.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. Benson, as we were talking about what has been successful with you guys, especially when we talk about the ProveIt community, it seems like the Groove line might have come out, 5 years before it was really needed in the market, especially when you were talking about cybersecurity. For me, I feel like Opto was one of the first groups, hardware or software really, who was very cybersecurity first, cybersecurity conscious. I feel like most of the rest of the world in the vendor space is caught up a little bit to that point, maybe not as far as you guys are. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey? Have you just continued to find more and more people who resonate with a similar message that you guys have said because cybersecurity has become more important because edge computing, whether it's an IPC or a non-IPC, at the edge becomes more important? Has that just continued to gain in popularity and demand?
Yeah, no question. It all comes down to what problems you're solving, right? And so today's problems are different than yesterday's problems. Let's go back a little bit in history. We've always been trying to, you mentioned we were a little ahead, or a lot ahead, however you want to put it. We've always been that way. In 1996, we sat down with 3 other companies and Microsoft because we wanted to figure out a way, how do we get this OT data out of these OT systems into IT applications? In this particular case, we were trying to get it into a Windows platform. So we developed something called OLE for process control, which we all know now is OPC. And that was way ahead of its time. And then just 2 years later, we came out with an Ethernet I/O product, pure TCP/IP. And when we launched that product, everybody in the market told us we were out of our minds. They said, we don't know what you guys are smoking down there in California, but there's no chance that Ethernet will ever make it to the plant floor. And indeed, look what happened. Clearly, were we prescient in some degree? No, we just knew TCP/IP was going to win the protocol wars, so we went all in. And we're doing the same kind of thing now. we're making sure that people are aware of the issues with not protecting your system and how easy it can be to do that without a bunch of bolt-on stuff. How do you make it innate? How do you make it cyber secure innate? But you have to be able to do that and still be able to share the data. This is so critical. And I think we've discussed this before, but it's worth mentioning again. There's a concept in IT called server and client. And those terms aren't used quite as much in OT. But in IT, it's a big deal. Why? Because you have to protect a server. Because what does a server do? It listens. It listens to requests. Some client connects to a server and asks it for data. That's a server. So all the IT guys are trying to protect servers. But guess what? That PLC down on the plant floor, it's a server. I ask it for something and it responds back. Now, what if I'm not, authorized to ask it for something? That becomes a problem. So the idea is like, how can we start turning some of these devices in OT into more clients? So they're collecting a lot of data and then they're a client to a server, and that's a big part of this conference is the use of technologies like MQTT. And the reason why is because MQTT allows me to be a client on the plant floor and produce my data that's consumed by others. And that means I'm going outbound from the device and not allowing traffic to come back in. I'm blocking that access, and that's what OT needs today. They need to be able to protect those systems down there for a whole bunch of reasons. Yes, you can put in VLANs, you can put in firewalls, you can do all of that stuff's available and readily available on the market today. It's just a little more complicated. Why not build it right in and protect people out of the box?
Absolutely. I do want to let our listeners know, Benson, you've been on, I remember 2 early conversations that we had with you. There may or may not have been another conversation that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. Vlad, because he does all the notes, will 100% go put the earlier Benson conversations in. We had early, within the first, I think, 50 episodes of Manufacturing Hub, we had you on doing a history.
Yeah.
And you did a history of industrial automation, and you laid in a whole lot of super interesting success stories like we've talked about here, but also some directions that Opto went and invested time and effort in that didn't win the protocol wars or didn't win that particular thing. And for me, that was really interesting. And I love the fact that Opto pictures itself and positions itself as that forward-looking company, knowing that we're going to have a bunch of major successes, but by being on the bleeding edge, we're also going to run into things that might not ever find that adoption or might find that adoption much later. Now, we're not asking...
have an example of that.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if you have an example of that, but I'm also interested to know what you guys think that the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like.
Yeah, so
if you can share, or what parts of that are open and publicish to share.
Yeah, that's safe. I won't say anything. Hopefully, it will get me in trouble. But we see. Let's talk about that example really quick. We thought that there was going to be a real opportunity to share data more easily over cellular.
Yeah.
We had just recently put together a project in the early 2000s where we put 10,000 cell towers, monitoring cell towers back to what's called a NOC, a Network Operations Center. And we're like, oh, this is going to change everything. So we partnered with Nokia at the time, which was the largest handset manufacturer in the world prior to Apple kind of taking over, or BlackBerry RIM. And we thought this is going to change everything. We'll put Nokia radios essentially on I/O and control systems, and the market wasn't ready. There was a whole bunch of reasons why it didn't work. We swung for the fences, and we struck out. And that's okay. That's how we learn and move forward. But we always say, okay, what's the next big thing? For us today, it does come down to a couple of things. One of the things we just announced at this show is we're now adding containers to our Groove Epic and Groove Rio system. So the reason why that's important is because it allows the proliferation of the right software tool for the right job at the edge. So you can choose what you want to do there, and we're protecting that, sandboxing it, but still putting on a platform that allows you to protect those systems, but still democratize their data. So we think that's a pretty big deal. We're also seeing the availability of more compute power, more RAM and so on. And so we're very intrigued by and been working with some interesting applications that start to do some of that analysis to, I hate to use these terms because they're so overused, AI, ML, mostly more on the ML side. How can we pre-process this data and cleanse it and normalize it to a high degree at the edge? and reduce the latency between that and the system that can use this information. So that's a big step for us as well. So it's a lot of it is more processing power, more capabilities, and potentially even smaller packages. And then another focus is trying to identify certain areas where manufacturers need some help. So for example, we've partnered with the state of Indiana and their economic development board to put together a package for manufacturers. And it's great. The state says, hey, we're going to give our manufacturers, small and medium-sized manufacturers, dollars to get started with smart manufacturing in Industry 4.0. But here's the problem. Every manufacturer is different. They all make something different. They make it a different way. But what's the one common denominator that all manufacturers have to deal with? One thing.
They all use power?
Exactly. They all use power. So that's something we've been focused on a lot lately, is being able to get power information out of large loads, understand their health, understand how much energy they're using, so that we can strike out quick wins. And that's what the state of Indiana did. They put together a starter kit that included Opto and some inductive automation software, funded that, gave it to these manufacturers so they could start their journey by digital transformation journey, but start with something that was very common. Now, could you go out and buy a bespoke energy monitoring system and do this? Yeah, sure. But what next? How do you scale that?
Yes.
You don't. You pivot. You do something. We're saying that there's a way to do this, to be able to start off with something we can all get our arms around, save some costs, notch up some wins, and then use that same system, scale it up to start communicating with other parts in the plant. And that's what we're showing here at ProveIt. And you guys know me. I don't want to tell people, I want to show them. And this is the right venue for that.
Absolutely. So we had Becca Gillespie. We had her on Manufacturing Hub. I think it was within the first month that she had taken over as director of that program. And I think you and she did an ICC presentation.
We did.
Was that, yes. And so I think you and she did an ICC presentation. I'm very excited to go find some time later this year to get her back on 18 months into the journey.
Sure.
What does it look like? What sort of insights have you been able to find? Because I think her going and capturing the hundreds or however many of small and medium manufacturers actually being able to collect the data, I think that would be very interesting to look at, to see what sort of insights she's gotten, and do they follow the lines of the large manufacturers that typically do have energy collection and energy programs.
But those large corporations have teams of people they can throw at it. And their focus has been on small and medium-sized manufacturers. And a lot of times, they may not have an IT department, and even much less an OT department. But they need to take those first steps. And so I think she's done a terrific job in putting this program together, because she did something else which was unique. This isn't just about technology, whether it's from Opto or from Inductive. It's about getting the right people in place. And so her program was able to create funding for system integrators and for training. In other words, she looked at the whole picture. This is not just a technology problem. This is a people problem too, and a processes problem. So how do we combine those? I thought she had a lot of foresight in putting that kind of the program together. So
I was going to ask you about those roadblocks, because I think, again, in our space, there's just not enough conversations about, not just, we're all excited about tech, right?
Right.
Want to see numbers move around, but ultimately, it is a challenge to bring this to an end customer who doesn't have the right, I want to say, team in place, the right maybe knowledge set in place to support and build them. And I guess maybe to bring this once again back to you is, what are some of these roadblocks? Is it because they're lacking teams? Is it because they're lacking commitment? Is it because the POCs are maybe not getting the ROI? Like, what are some of the conversations you're having where they are presenting some interesting roadblocks?
Yeah, a lot of it, let's be honest, whatever you decide to do, you're going to have to find a budget for it, right? And that means you're talking to somebody probably higher up in the chain. And then what's the very next question? Oh, you need this much money? What's the ROI? So those kind of things are real. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And so that's why we always continue to say is, let's find a problem you're dealing with and let's solve that at a small scale, and then we can branch out from there. Absolutely. We did the same thing at Opto. We're a California manufacturer. Our electricity bill was through the roof. So what did we do? We focused first on how can we start saving money in energy. And I don't mean to be coming back to energy a lot, but it's just a classic example where if you can notch out a win, save some dollars, that may give you a little juice to go for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But to your question about what are those roadblocks, it's a lot of old thinking. The notion of digital strategy is still nascent, that it's still relatively new, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily made its way all up to the upper echelons. Now, there are some companies here. One of them is our customer. I can't mention his name. I can't even mention the industry he's in, but I'll tell you this, he came up with some really brilliant ideas about how to collect a lot of data from their machines, and thankfully he chose Opto to help him do that. But ultimately what happened is he showed that to his CEO, and his CEO is like, what do you need? You have an open checkbook. Let's go make this happen. Not because it was cool, not because it gave him new dashboards or anything. You know why? Because he has to compete with Chinese competitors. Mm-hmm. And he has, with this digital transformation project that they're well involved in, they have what they believe is a distinct and strategic competitive advantage against their competitors because of the way that they've digitally transformed their business to be more efficient, more operationally ready, and to build new products at more scale. And so sometimes it does need to come from the CEO because they set the tone. But you know, the roadblocks exist and we know them. I just watched a really cool talk with Emma Roloff, who talked about this idea about making sure people are involved in the process. That stuff is super critical. So every organization is going to be different. Mm-hmm. Everyone, they have a different way to approach this. It's just how do you put enough arrows in your quiver to tackle all those roadblocks, and we're hoping that we can provide some of that, and certainly with our partners help to notch some of those things off. And case studies, of course, helped. But getting back to case studies, I couldn't even mention all the companies that are using our products because they believe the same way. We don't want to give up what's making it work for us because our competitors will do it. But nonetheless, case studies always really help customers understand and see the vision of what can occur if you line everything up right and get those approvals. And start knocking off wins. Start small, scale up, fail often.
I love it. Benson, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Back towards the end users and viewers at home, if they have one of the 4,000 takeaways we've talked about Opto so far, what is the one major takeaway that you want them to bring from Opto, from ProveIt?
From Opto is just that we're there to help. We're here to help people solve problems. And if it's tying to old brownfield asset equipment, getting that data in so that we can start understanding how to operate more efficiently, save costs. And sometimes it's just, you'd be surprised if you start to expose some data, people will see that and say, hey, I know what I can do with that and help improve processes. And that's the biggest thing. All of our support is free. All of our application assistance is free. All of our pricing is on our website. We're just here to help. And if you've got an idea and you're looking to get started on a project and you do want to start small, give us a shout. Let us see if we can help you with your application. If not, we'll steer you somewhere with somebody who can.
Benson, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We look forward to seeing more of the Opto solutions here. I do want to say, for our viewers at home, some of these, if you're not at the conference, some of the ProveIt sessions, such as the Opto, will be available online. I don't know what the timeline of that is going to look like online. I think if you're part of the mastermind, that'll come out quicker. I think the rest of them will come out at some point, probably over the course of the next couple of months. If it is before this video goes live, we'll go ahead and link Benson and the Opto's ProveIt session. If not, we'll go ahead and link the ProveIt website, and I'm sure eventually it will come out. But we do want to thank you all for continuing to watch the Manufacturing Hub coverage here at ProveIt. Stay tuned. We'll have more coverage of these sessions, of these conversations like the one we've got here with Benson. And then beyond that, tune in, watch Vlad and I, 4 o'clock East Coast time, 1 o'clock California Pacific time, Wednesday afternoons. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub. We are back here at ProveIt, day 1, talking with Travis from Inductive Automation. Travis, I don't know how our listeners would manage to have watched 200 episodes without hearing you or one of the other many inductive folks that we've had on over the years. But if someone is watching ProveIt content and doesn't know Inductive Automation, can you tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about the company, and what you're here to solve, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me here as well. So I'm Travis Cox. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for Inductive Automation, and I've been with the company for over 20 years, and throughout my entire career, it's always been focused on helping customers build their plant floor solutions and to talk about the art of the possible and to take advantage of what's there and to solve more pain points and challenges and to do more. And that's really what Inductive Automation is all about. We're an integration company, and we're as a software company to solve those pain points. And so we create Ignition, our software product that does that. And I'm super happy to be here at ProveIt to showcase what Ignition does in the digital infrastructure.
And I guess in the context of ProveIt, right, you were given a certain data set of a real factory that was collected over a period of time. Maybe can you talk to us a little bit more? What kind of a challenge did you find to solve? How would you tackle it? And ultimately, what was the benefit for the end user?
So honestly, I didn't find it to be challenging at all. We can go there because ultimately they provide the infrastructure, which is really important because often when you talk to a customer or you're going into a new system, they don't have the infrastructure. And so you're helping them through, what does that look like? What should we have? And here, it started with that. This is what we want. This is our digital strategy. How do you fit into this strategy? What benefits do you provide us in the strategy? I think it's pretty refreshing. So they provided OPC UA server, they provided MQTT broker, and they provided a SQL database, all three of which are native things that Ignition has worked with for many years.
Could you maybe elaborate on that comment, right? Not having the right infrastructure, maybe what does it take for your solution to shine, or maybe what are some of the early steps for someone who does not have the infrastructure that we're seeing at ProveIt?
Yeah, when we looked at building a SCADA system or MES system, it's how people approach it has always been the same. It's like, I'm going to go build a SCADA system. So those domain experts figure out, okay, here's the data we're going to connect to. We're going to bring it in. We're going to build that. We're going to accomplish those goals. We then go on to another system that says MES, and they have a different team. They go do the same stuff. And ultimately, the real mindset shift is this data is important to the business. So let's make sure that we're focusing on what does the data mean to us? And the data comes from the SCADA and MES. Likely they're going to need data from each other. But ultimately, the data from both of those are going to be super insightful for the business to solve additional challenges later on. And so it's that infrastructure of basically say, look, okay, I want to build a SCADA system, but I also want to make sure that data is available to me. Same thing for the MES. And so that common infrastructure, the UNS approach, it's really that mindset change, because if I can get it into a common infrastructure, now I can unlock the power of that data. And you don't have to do a lot to build the infrastructure. You can start really small, but it's a kind of idea of let's decouple our data from the applications, from who needs to get that data, and make it leverage open standards so that now people who need it have the means to do that.
Absolutely. Let me ask, talking about UNS and the ProveIt conference here, when new customers are coming and talking to you, Travis, are they talking to you and discovering UNS? Are they committed to the idea of a UNS and then looking at Ignition as one of their solutions? How does that typically work for you guys in the Ignition ecosystem?
We certainly see all the above, but more and more people and companies are getting educated on what UNS is.
Yes.
And we all know it's not a product. It's a strategy, it's a concept, it's something that they have to understand and figure out how to deploy for themselves. And so some are coming to us say, hey, we understand UNS. What does that mean to you? How do you fit into it? And that's where we can go in the art of the possible, kind of showcase what, for example, MQTT and Sparkplug has to offer in that. There's a lot of customers, of course, that don't really have any idea what this is. But they know, especially when CIOs are getting involved, they know they want to get more insights, right, and to do more data. And so that's where I think that's important to kind of get the education out there as to we can't just build these systems the way we've been building it for 25 years. We've got to think about it differently, and ultimately get OT and IT working together to accomplish that. But we're getting people from all different sides. But what's great to see is more and more people are understanding, or at least thinking about UNS. And that's an important thing. It's that shift away from proprietary into open frameworks. And pretty soon companies are going to be like, look, we're not going to use products that don't fit into our infrastructure or how we want to do things. And that's a big change, right, for our industry.
I want to ask you a question again around maybe the challenges of having that many vendors building on top of that UNS simultaneously. And obviously without naming any names, but again, I think we've all seen an integration, I'm going to say projects, there's going to be multiple hands in the proverbial jar, and so you run into issues maybe. And so I'm curious, and even outside of ProveIt, maybe what kind of challenges you have seen on that side. And I think the UNS solves that extremely well, but I would still say there probably are some challenges. So if you could elaborate on some of those indeed.
Yeah, first of all, you've got to establish what you want that naming convention and that standard to be, because if you just let it be the Wild West, there will be tons of collisions. tons of problems. Data won't necessarily have the right context or mean what you want it to mean.
Right.
So
who would do that? Look, sorry to interrupt. Who is that? An integrator? Is that the end user?
ideally, it's the end user who's defining what they want their hierarchy and their namespace to be, because they're going to have process data in there. They're going to have the MES data there. They're going to have analytic data in there. They're going to have potential ERP data in there, and like maintenance management. All this information can get put into this common infrastructure, this namespace. But in order for them to, if I were to connect into it, in order for them to make sense, they have to be able to understand it.
Yes.
So they need to define that. And honestly, right now, we're using the ISA 95 standard, right, for that, in terms of that's what you're seeing here. The enterprise, the site, the areas, the lines, the cells, organizing that way. And then even within that, breaking into what's process data, what's MES data, what's the operator-related data, all of that. You break in those different folders, and if you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
So that's a great place for people to at least start the conversations.
Absolutely. And if I can add to Travis's comment, I think that the only way to be successful in contextualizing and building those strategies are at the corporate level, and it's as early as possible.
Yeah.
I think that once you have lines built or lines in process of being built without those requirements, without those kind of very base company standards, you now assume a huge amount of tech debt. And not only do you have to go through as an organization of building those standards, but then you have to go back through the process of fixing those hopefully only thousands or tens of thousands of tags that are not created to those standards. And I have seen different prime builders and things like that have a standard, and that standard is good for them. But as soon as you start adding outside vendors, and as soon as you start going and building systems on top of all of that, by the time some of us come in, it's just a jumble of, I can see that we just built this, but it feels like we've got a decade worth of tech debt just on the naming conventions, just on the tag side and the structure side, and it's going to be months worth of work in order to go set that right after we've built an agreed upon standard.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think UNS hits upon the true OT-IT convergence.
Yes.
Because obviously there's a lot of data in OT. We want to make use of it in the business side, but you can't just approach it from, listen, if we have one site, you're starting, there's one small use case, if we approach it as an independent thing and we don't think about anything else, then it may not scale.
Absolutely. It almost never scales. In my experience, it almost never scales. If you go build a one-off, almost no one thinks about, okay, what happens if we build it from one line to the rest of the facilities, or God forbid, this one line to 20 facilities in the region.
Yeah, you need to have common philosophy and framework across all of your entire organization. I think the biggest thing, though, is leadership does have to set the tone.
Yes.
That in order for us to digitally transform, this has to be part of our DNA.
Yes.
Everybody is going to contribute to this. And so, because everybody is aware, from operators all the way up to C-level, if everybody understands that this is going to help drive business decisions, it's going to help drive our objectives, and that we should all take it seriously, and so that we get more collaboration, that's where you're going to start winning.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Because that's the part that I think a lot of companies are neglecting.
Yes.
It's like, we have people that are smart here, we're going to build this infrastructure, where this one site becomes this model citizen, but then we can't take it anywhere else because we don't have that leadership that's driving it.
Absolutely. And if I may, one more time, Vlad, he's chomping at the bit, Travis. I would 100% agree. I think that we're in an interesting time in manufacturing because we are now to the point of having tools and technologies and softwares and a relatively small number of people, but tools, times, and technologies that will allow us to build and scale a solution. I feel like every so often you go and you talk to a medium to large organization and they're like, I have 5 sites. All 5 of my sites did this completely different. We've got 2 off-the-shelf solutions. We've got 2 sites that are pen and paper, and we've got this one bespoke solution, and we've got 5 full-time developers trying to bubblegum it together, and they love their bespoke solution, but it will not scale, and absolutely none of them will scale. So we're at a really interesting time where that is becoming possible for groups smaller than Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies.
And that's honestly the part, those are the companies that we really want to provide solutions to.
Absolutely.
The small and medium size, because they're not going to have the resources or potentially the budget, right, to be able to do this. But the technology is so accessible. There's so much of it. And we're seeing it all here at ProveIt, and it's all converging, I think.
If I could do a follow-up on both of this stuff.
Sure.
But I think that to some extent, people understand the value of a critical SCADA system, right? So when you go to sell a SCADA, I think there's no question in most customers' minds that you need something that's robust, that's going to provide value for the plant floor. I think on the data side, we're still seeing, as you mentioned, there's maybe a need for a catalyst or a push for them to see the value, whether it's for something as simple as an employee metric or something a bit more advanced like troubleshooting. So I guess my question for you, Travis, would be, what are you seeing with customers that ignites that spark that, yes, like we actually get this and they're going to change what they've been doing in the past and are looking to adopt more data solutions versus, again, maybe some traditional SCADA and things?
Yeah, no, I think it's identifying an actual use case. If we're going to start small, you can't eat the whole elephant. You got to start small. If we can identify a use case, and honestly, it's been said here already, but that's the energy's use case. We want to be energy reduction, become more green, or at least want to understand what our energy profiles look. Maybe it's on one asset that we start with. And you start there, you get the data where it needs to go, so you can start getting some insights off of that and get a win. If you can get the win, that will be a catalyst for future projects to take off. So what's important is that you not only have to identify the use case, but you then have to, even if it's a small one, you got to lay the right foundation architecture to accomplish that, because then the next use case comes in, it should be very easy to just implement that.
Yes.
Because you have the infrastructure in place. So I think those two are incredibly important.
Is the challenge usually on the technical side or on the people and change management side?
100% on the people and change management side. Like, the technology there's so much out there. And what I found really interesting is more and more IT departments want to get involved. Historically, there's been that, if you will, that rift between OT and IT, but there's a recognition that, like, hey, we have a lot of knowledge. We know how to build infrastructures. We know, like, especially now with containerization and Kubernetes and all this, this are great, and we want to be able to bring that in and fully take advantage of it.
100%.
So the technology is amazing, but it's hard to change people's mindsets.
I agree. I always say, and almost all of our guests disagree with me, Travis, is that IT, in my best, most successful projects, IT are core partners. If they're not core partners, you run into this IT-OT convergence, you run into groups hating each other, you run into shadow IT. On the best, most successful projects, IT is at the table at the very beginning, or sometimes they're the ones driving this.
Yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So maybe your first one on here is to agree completely with that. I think the most successful companies are the ones that have taken the OT professionals and the IT professionals and created it into one team.
Okay.
Right, where they're both say, look, we have our domain knowledge, you have your domain knowledge. Together, we're going to accomplish some of these goals that the company has. Let's work on these things together. It shouldn't be that, like, if you will, if I'm having a meeting, that it's OT by themselves and no IT in there, or vice versa, IT in there with no OT, because that's where the problems come. OT people's ITs do making decisions without me, and we have to run a line. Our line has to keep running. And vice versa, like, IT people's like, well, I don't want you making decisions for us or using shadow IT or using tools that we don't support. So if they are making those decisions together, I think they're going to have a lot more success.
What group would that be under?
Gosh, I don't know. Okay. What would we call that?
That's the question. I have seen some groups who have IT folks on their OT side, mostly on the operations side under the COO.
Yeah.
I have seen a shocking number of groups. Honestly, one would be shocking, but a shocking number of groups that have the SCADA MES and development teams under IT, because when they structured the first time, it was software's under IT.
Yeah.
I don't know what that unified group would be, but I 100% agree. You need to be able to have the conversations with the people buying and speccing the servers and the network architecture across the entirety of the organization.
And if I may, I'll add one more thing, which I think is really important. It's that on the IT side, especially the CIOs coming in, recognize that they want to set a name, right? And they want to solve some major problems, but if they don't understand the manufacturing environment, if they're not making the effort to go and to live in the day of the life of an operator or people on the plant floor, then it's going to be really hard for these sides to come together. And ultimately, I 100% believe that in order for a company to be successful, that you have to look from the ground up. Those operations folks and people running it are so critical in all these decisions that you need to understand their challenges, you solve their challenges, but do it in a way so that it unlocks the potentials that we can get in IT. And it can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go to a Magic Quadrant and just pick a solution just because it's in a particular area and say, we're going to use that. You've really got to look at it holistically.
Where have you seen the most, continuing again like conversation IT and OT champions that would push these solutions? To me, it's always or usually a person that really understands the process at a deep level that can drive something home again, like maybe the first proof of concept. But ultimately, have you seen maybe IT folks be more excited on the software side and seek with data when we have those conversations?
Yeah, you definitely get champions from either end. There are, first of all, you have to get a champion. You got to get somebody who's going to be able to drive that and can understand the value and the ROI you're going to get out of these. But I've seen it from IT because ultimately they understand the data science world. They understand how to get insights into data, and they want access to it and to help. But I think more often, though, it comes from the plant floor. If there's champions there that really fundamentally understand, they may not have all the answers. They don't have to technically understand all the pieces. But if they can drive that and connect the right people, then they know what they're going to get from an operations standpoint. The efficiencies they'll gain on that. Because, heck, it's been said for a lot of projects, if you can gain just 2% then efficiency, what's that mean in terms of your revenue and all that?
I want to talk about that a little bit. Vlad made a really good point, I think, yesterday when we were talking with some groups about how some groups are going to talk about small to medium-sized manufacturers, but some groups, especially some groups here, are super enterprise manufacturers, right? And when we talk about OEE, you love to show the figures of, hey, we found a 30% or a 50% additional OEE. And for some groups, that is reasonable and possible. But for all of the major enterprises out there, Vlad's like, in some of his past lives, like 0.2% is $1 billion of revenue.
Yeah.
So how do you, from the software side, from the ignition side, go figure out, are you talking to mostly the small to medium groups? Does that messaging change when you talk to enterprise where 0.1% is $1 billion? What does that look like? How do you go make those decisions to the different groups and how you go send that message out?
Yeah, that's interesting, the way you bring that, because when you're talking as the small ones, they don't have any data at all. Everything's manual, and often there's no HMI. It might be the only thing they have on the floor. So there's so much opportunity for digital transformation with the small, once they're aware of the technologies that they could bring in. But the medium ones, I think there's a large focus on OE in the medium.
Yeah.
And that's because it's now approachable. Okay, we do have sensors, we've got data, and we understand our process, but we could do better, right?
Yes.
There's ways that we could do better just with what we already have. We don't have to introduce new lines and new machines. We could just do it there. And OE is still so critical as a solution. I don't hear it as much with the large one because they've walked the walk with a lot of it, even though it's still incredibly important.
Yep.
But I think what it does is the conversation has shifted to how do we leverage AI or ML to eke out more efficiency, which is really just OE in a different way. I was saying in my head, like, we asked that
You
question.
said the quiet part out loud, Travis.
Sorry?
You said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you maybe a more forward-looking question, right? So
Sure.
I think that we're seeing a lot of different partners and different solutions here at ProveIt, right? What are you maybe excited about as complementary technologies to Ignition? Are you excited to see more advanced like PLCs, more advanced brokers, more advanced historians, like more advanced messaging? You know what I mean? Like, what are you looking at and saying, oh, like that's an interesting advancement that will allow us maybe to leverage this better for the end user?
I think there's two sides of the coin there. Three. I'll mention three. So one is, look, if we don't have to connect to a PLC to get data, it just comes into Ignition, I'm happy with that.
Yep.
And honestly, that's the way it needs to be. The big focus is building applications, building a SCADA system, building an alarming system, building an MES system. You want to be able to do that, and access to data shouldn't be difficult.
Yep. But if the PLC is better, would you say it's easier to access the data, or it's still
Okay, it depends on how you've approached it, but it should, if that's a single source of truth for the data, and the data is already contextualized there, then that makes our job really easy. If it's not, then we have to do that additional work, right? We've got to add that context. So I think that's one area where it will change dramatically. Look at a greenfield situation, it's gonna what you deploy there's amazing stuff, right? It's gonna completely be different. I also look at it from a storage point of the storing data. We would traditionally store that in historians on premise or SQL databases or whatever, and those tools, while that's important for like local trends and but I'm more excited for storing that data with context in these data warehouses that are set up for sharing data, set up for easier access to analytics off that data, because you can run those and get results right back into the system, right?
Absolutely.
But I gotta say, what I'm really excited about would be, a chatbot for an operator is it's pretty exciting, right? To imagine I'm operator and I just say, hey, natural language, what's going on with line 3? And it takes all the information that's been collected, all the drawings of the machines and the documentations and their past experiences, and it can give them a really good responses to, hey, we're having these issues, maybe we should try this or this.
Absolutely.
That's going to be an incredible day.
I agree. I have always been on the operator or operations level will give us the most forward immediate value, because most people don't think that have never paged through a 1,000-page maintenance manual to find a particular answer, and then there's like a grease smudge over it or an oil drip over the thing that you need to read. Travis, this has been amazing. I want to go and mention to all of our listeners at home, mostly the fact that I think like half of the groups here are using Ignition. No, like not just in the infrastructure, not how as built like virtual factory. I was paging through, and you may or may not have also seen it, Travis, it's what piece of technology are you using, what other pieces of technology are you using, and I'm like, I think almost all of these groups or half the groups are using Ignition, which I think is just a testament to the cornerstone that is to the industry and especially to the providers here. But I do want to ask you one last question, Travis. If the viewers at home are looking to take away one thing from you, from Ignition, from ProveIt, what is the one thing you want them to think about and remember?
That's a really good question. At the end of the day, we really believe in the ecosystem and community. And we have an amazing product for the plant floor. And that's where we want to revolutionize the plant floor. We can do that. Then there's so much more that gets unlocked. And honestly, there's this thing could hand-pick technology, right? That you could just play with and use. That's our focus, is to really deliver the most and to continue to solve additional pain points and make it easy for people to build these kind of systems at the end of the day. But it won't happen without open standards. It won't happen without community in terms of being able to choose best in class.
Absolutely. I love that. Travis, thank you so much, as always, for hanging out with us. Everyone, thank you for watching this. I hope you're enjoying this and our continued ProveIt coverage. Please stick around. Go check the chat and the show notes. We'll have all of the information that we talked about with Ignition and the other services. Mostly that's 100% on Vlad, so thank you for continuing to do that, Vlad. You make our show notes amazing. Be sure to catch us normal times, Wednesdays, 4 o'clock East Coast time on Manufacturing Hub with Vlad and I and our normal guests, and continue to hang out for more ProveIt coverage. Super excited to have Caleb and Sofiane from Siemens USA and Siemens Austria. Austria is below Germany for all of our American listeners. So super happy to be here. As you guys have heard me say, I am potentially the most excited to see what the Siemens team has put together, because they have so many awesomes, so many options, and so many fantastic platforms. So if we can start with Caleb and then go to Sofiane, can you tell the listeners at home who may not know you, may not know Siemens and the group that you're working for, what group you're working for, and what are you here to prove this week?
Good. So I work for what's called the Siemens Tiger team here in the North and here in the United States. Our responsibility is essentially to be responsive to the needs of end users and to provide product feedback to Siemens, the teams in Germany, Austria that we have making the products. So what essentially Siemens wanted closer feedback and tighter feedback loops from end customers. And so oftentimes when something is particularly complex, or an end user or a manufacturer wants to do something that is out of the norm or a lot or more advanced, then they will generally send the Tiger team to address that. And oftentimes it's going to be answering questions that Siemens itself doesn't know the answer to. And then out of that, we gain a lot of insight into sort of where the state of our end customers are, and we provide that feedback. And we're not associated with a specific vertical. Okay. We're not associated with any specific products. Generally, though, we'll be operating most of the products from what they call the Industrial Operations X or the accelerator bank of products, but we often also deal with some of the more mature ones as well. And what we're here to prove is I would say that we're here to prove that Siemens is not only can interoperate with other systems and sort of in a more broader ecosystem, in particular UNS, but also that we have our own vision as to where it goes from there. Once you've achieved, let's call it UNS mastery, as it were, which obviously is a cyclical concept, right? That there's a place that you go if you're thinking more along the lines of autonomous factory or anything like that. Siemens has its own vision as to what that looks like. And so that's what we're here to prove.
Absolutely. That's a lot. I'm excited to unpack that, Caleb. But Sofian, can you tell us, so you're on the Siemens WinCC open architecture team, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
So I know, and I've talked to you guys, my love of OA over the last couple of days and for probably years before this, but for the most listeners who might not know Siemens WinCC open architecture, can you tell everyone a little bit about what it is and how you're using this tool?
Sure, of course. But let me first thank you, Dave and Vlad, for having us here in this amazing podcast. Really looks crazy. No joking. Having Caleb in our team is really a win. It's already a win. Yeah, so thank you very much for having us in this podcast. And I'm Sofian. I work for ETM. ETM is a Siemens company. We are the WinCC OA product owner. We are based in Eisenstadt, Austria. It's like people sometimes get confused. Austria, Australia, guys, it's Austria, below Germany. Yeah, we speak German also. Yeah, this is not the only thing that people confuse. They actually confuse also WinCC OA. What is this whole thing? I know it's like maybe it's hard to distinguish between this Siemens portfolio products, but guess what? We are here to clarify this. We are here to make it easy for people to understand every product what is made for, and we want also to raise awareness how OA is big actually and what you can do with it. You have no idea. For these people, I'm talking to these people who are watching us maybe now, you have no idea what OA can be or what OA can do actually.
Crazy product.
Yeah, it has a complete different system and mechanism how it works. We call it event driven system. And you have everything talking separately. You have event manager, have other managers talking to each other, the scalability, the performance. So in these 3 days, we really want to make people knowing true WinCC OA and can help me here.
He wants to demonstrate the OA's capabilities.
Exactly,
It's
OA's
very-
capabilities.
It's very difficult to do on this scale because OAs can go to massive scales, right? But to OA, this is small scale.
Absolutely. I think the first big one that I heard that helped ETM grow OA was the CERN Super Collider.
The Large Hadron Collider,
Yes, absolutely. Which is both amazing and honestly really scary every time I say it, guys. I am really happy.
So you should be happy that OA is what's controlling the Large Hadron Collider.
That's what I was going to say. Knowing the engineers who created it, I am very happy that this is what we chose to create.
We would be so happy to have you in our offices in Eisenstadt, and we can guide you through how the magic is happening.
Yeah.
I'm excited and scared.
Absolutely.
Just to follow up, so OA can do a lot of things. What are you guys here to prove? What are the use cases that you are showcasing?
Let me take this. In Europe, usually, thank you. So it's like in Europe, how we show and demonstrate things. I've learned since I came here, it's different here in US. In US, everything built on trust. You have to show me, do not go through slides and stuff. And this is what we did today. We brought our product, brought our engineers from Eisenstadt. They are here sitting in booth number 8, like that. So we want to demonstrate live how OA can guide you through your digital transformation and its capabilities and what can do. Actually, we prepared the demo, of course, for this ProveIt, the integrity, how you can integrate with the UNS, queryability, connectivity, and so on, dashboarding, and much more. And also, we brought the product itself, and we're gonna demonstrate live to people. Whatever question the people have, we can answer it.
And let me ask you to dig into that a little bit deeper, right? So ultimately, the ProveIt team has given you a data set from a factory that was operational and still is operational, but I guess at a certain point in time. What kind of maybe challenges did you see at that facility, and what can the end users expect maybe as solutions when they come to your booth and look at some of those features?
So from our perspective, it was the data set that we were given was a lot of MES data and things like that. We actually generated Siemens, the printing presses they have are Siemens controllers, and we're familiar with. So we actually generated a printing press so that, and really the challenges that we saw is that where they're at in their UNS journey is actually one of the more mature UNS, but when you go beyond where they're at and they want to start doing more autonomous operations, or they're wanting to do leverage AI or anything like that, at that point, there's a specific architecture that you want to implement if you're going to go beyond the dashboard. So what we want to show is the art of the possible of going beyond the dashboard and what it would look like if you were preparing your data for AI. The amount of data that we received, the amount of data that we're getting from the UNS, because we're talking about doing things that involve the control system. You obviously, because it's a simulated data, we can't show you hey, you got a 6% production increase from doing this. We would need the real stuff to do that. But we are showing what that would look like, because in our world, someone who's as mature along the path of UNS as they are, then they're eventually going to say, what are we going to do next? Okay. Our view on this is, we view our role on this as helping to, what would they do next?
Maybe taking a quick step back, because I also don't have as much exposure as I would like to WinCC OA. So I'm just trying to understand maybe what does an architecture, maybe deployment look like for a less mature customer. So if you're just looking for someone with control systems and they're looking to pull on data, maybe for that AI purpose, as you described, what does that look like? Do you go and deploy edge solutions that can allow you to pull that data, then you visualize it? What is maybe some of those steps?
Yeah, so if we're talking about brownfield and we're working around what they have today, right? Then oftentimes what we would say is you'd set OA essentially next to their ignition, if they're using ignition, which we know that factory is, right? And what we would do is we would start to, obviously, just as we are here in the virtual factory, we're interacting with that system via OA. And the first thing we're doing with it is that because of the UNSs, especially with the other vendors, that topic structure is changing all the time. And one of the things that people say, you can't query a UNS. Well, what we've done with OA is we're basically, because of the performance of OA, we can map in real time the structure of the UNS. And you can actually then query that structure from OA. So that's something that you can do right away with OA, just to better enable UNS. But beyond that, right, the question is, at some point, someone's going to say, I want to write values back to the PLC, right, from an upper layer system. Now, if no one has asked for this yet, there's no way that it doesn't eventually happen. You call it the CEO of the world's view of this stuff is that we have autonomous cars. Why can't we have autonomous factories? And with the workforce becoming more tech-enabled, less process-enabled, the key is setting your system up for contextualization, for enabling the autonomous control back to the control system. But you want to have a layer that will field that stuff. So you don't want to just have an AI to a PLC. You need to have some kind of safety net, if you will. And that safety net, we believe, is OA.
Okay. I love that. I think it's interesting. So we certainly could talk about OA for the next 5 hours.
We sure could.
And we will at some point in the future. So while we were here, we were talking with the WinCC OA team, and there are some exciting kind of continuations of opportunities in the US. And I think we've been given permission for you guys to talk about an event that's going to happen probably second half of the year. Do you guys want to announce it, or do you want me to?
You can. You're more eloquent than I am. But
Exactly.
Perfect. For the first time in my memory of OA, which is about 8 years, for the first time, certainly since the pandemic, there is a plan for a multi-day WinCC OA user conference convention, bringing in end users, bringing in a bunch of the Europeans who have a lot of experience. And that is currently in plans, and we're super excited to be there. We're super happy to talk about it. As I told the entire OA team, I'm happy to see you guys. It's been a while.
yeah.
We are also happy to see you, man.
Yep.
Good. I want to ask Caleb a question. So Caleb, you talked about Tiger Team. And I feel like we would be the worst podcast hosts in the entire world if we didn't ask you, Caleb, what the heck is Tiger? Can you go a little bit deeper into Tiger Team and maybe some of the specifics you're dealing with, or maybe you guys have a customer use case that we can share?
Okay, so there's a lot of use cases I could give. Generally, like I said, generally it's going to be customers who are maybe a little further along the path. So a lot of them are large customers. We do have some small, but oftentimes it's new problems. It's things that are not easily solved with just some out-of-the-box solution.
Okay.
So a good example would be a controlled environment agriculture, so indoor vertical farming company that is trying to make an MES system work for that, which is very different than like a CNC job shop or something. And they're using Industrial Edge and WinCCOA and OpCenter X and so okay, now that just became a complex thing, and it requires a combination of deep industry process knowledge and also technical knowledge, a lot of technical knowledge. And so that's on the Tiger Team. Another example would be a large carpet manufacturer that is trying to leverage AI in their system. Trying not to get too specific.
I guess let me ask the question on the vertical farming. So we're taking all of these different solutions that probably haven't been used in this application before. Is Tiger Team coming in and architecting it? Are they doing the proof of value? Are they figuring out how it goes? And I guess, are you guys internally delivering the project?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Tiger Team is, I guess I buried the lead. So the Tiger Team is actually call it Siemens Rapid Deploy Team.
Okay.
That Siemens essentially, we call it co-innovation with customers. And generally Siemens is making, in such cases, Siemens is making their own investment in that, or we're not a profit center for Siemens. We are a team that there's some strategic reason why Siemens is, and the customer, generally speaking, the customer is more open to a co-innovation. It's not like the customer says, do this and we do that. And yes, and we architect, create proof of value, and then we pass it off to a partner.
Yep.
Okay. So we're tackling all the big, hairy stuff. And again, from a Siemens perspective, it's about closest to the customer. It's about getting feedback on the products in their current state.
Yes.
It's about proving out some of the more modern products, if you will.
Okay.
So it's not just like the normal Siemens ecosystem applies if you're doing a normal thing that is just,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense. I want to go ask one more kind of series of questions specifically about Siemens Industrial Edge. I know you guys are using Siemens Industrial Edge as part of this product. Okay. I'm going to ask because Chris Liu is the first person that told me you guys are coming to ProveIt. I think Chris would kill me when I see him at Automate if we don't talk and at least pump up Siemens Industrial Edge a little bit. I'm really excited to know, what are you guys using Siemens Industrial Edge for versus WinCCOA? What's ingesting the data, or what modules are you using on the Industrial Edge side?
Industrial Edge, we're largely speaking using it as a control plane. If you look at the same way you look at Kubernetes, so it's a delivery of the containerized applications. You can deliver WinCCOA via Industrial Edge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but largely speaking, we're using, in this case, so I'm going to talk about a totally different set of apps than you'll normally hear from Chris Liu and his team. Because again, that team is normally handling like the normal use cases. Which again, is about dashboards.
Tell us all the weird stuff.
Our
Caleb.
team is beyond dashboard. So we use machine proxy. Which is, if you're familiar with MTP standard, what machine proxy allows you to do is it runs as a runtime over the PLC. You can do the logic mapping from the PLC to make your control system MTP compliant without doing surgery on the PLC code.
Oh, that's really cool.
I know.
So Caleb is like the only other American I've ever had a conversation about MTP about, who, well, at that point he wasn't actively working for Siemens, so the only other non-European organization who like knew what MTP was. Fun fact, Caleb, 2 weeks ago we had someone ask about MTP in the chat on Manufacturing Hub, and I'm like, man, I have a podcast that you need to go listen to, because I'm pretty sure Caleb and I nerded out about it for half an hour.
MTP, I will admit, and
module type pack.
Don't make fun of me. I've read the MTP standard end to end.
Okay.
It's written on the left side, it's in German. On the right side, it's in English.
Okay.
It put out by VDI, which I can't remember what that stands for. It's some Society of German Engineers.
Yeah.
It's to me, if you ignore the OPCOA aspect of MTP and you just focus on the state machines and the interaction between the process equipment assembly and the process orchestration layer. I'm sorry, I should be careful not to go too, but I really want to nerd out about this right now. So you tell me,
Caleb, you and I will have another conversation where we'll go pull up some diagrams.
Yes.
We'll go pull up some diagrams and we will nerd out about it later.
Of course, actually, also with OA, that is a proof of concept.
Yes.
I've developed this
OA
MTP demo where you can, of course, export the MTP file. You have everything generated, the screen and also the object, and automatically connected to the field.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is why we call it the plug and play.
I look for. I hope we can see
also
that.
show it to you.
Yes.
Of
Yeah,
course.
we'll actually be publishing MTP topics to the UNS.
It's
it's
also
fun.
part of the ProveIt.
It's part of the. It's part of what we're going to prove.
That is, we will catch that live tomorrow. Vlad, I feel like we've talked, and I have mostly bogarted the conversation, as sometimes I do with Caleb. What questions do you have for him?
I'm curious on the customer side, right? When both of you are having these conversations, are they not seeing maybe the initial opportunities because of lack of technology? Is it because of they lack the skill set to execute on them? Are they looking to, I guess, what are the roadblocks that they're facing in the current markets and the customers that you're talking to?
Here's the roadblock I usually see. A customer will have a controls engineering group, and they'll have hired maybe some data scientists, maybe some kids out of college, Python, something. Those two groups are too far apart. They don't speak the same language. There's inherent knowledge lost between these two. And so usually the problem is there's this big gap of people not knowing what they don't know. And in these two groups, both of these groups will each go do their own research and they'll be in their own domain. So the data scientists will be in their domain of Python, GitHub. They'll go through the open source libraries. The controls engineers will typically pull out the tools of Node-RED and things like that. And somehow in the middle of this, you're supposed to get some kind of robust, stable system, right? Somehow in the middle of this, you're supposed to be able to have a world in which the data scientists can deploy an application that interacts with the control system, but the controls engineers have fundamental control over what happens before it. And these two worlds think completely differently about data.
Yep.
In the control world, it's actually better to have no data than wrong data. Or it's actually just as bad to have the right answer in the wrong timing as it is to have the wrong answer. In the analytics world, you want all the data. You want the data, you want the bad data, you want the good data. You want to build differentiate between it, which of course the data scientists will struggle with because they're data scientists, they're not process engineers.
Yep.
So they can't tell you what's good and what's bad about that data, but they want it all. And so usually the problem is that the distance between these teams is so vast. It's very difficult to imagine a world in which you're going to create an effective system out of this. That you're going to there's no future path. And you can see that no future path being manifest by people being afraid to talk about leveraging AI in the control system.
Interesting.
Imagine that, right?
I'm concerned about using AI in the control system.
I'm
concerned.
They're doing it. Autonomous vehicles have been doing this now for 15 years. So it's not like you can't safely use AI in a control system. It's that there's a method and a path by which you would do it.
Sure.
And that path is generally considered, a lot of people would say, it's not for us, we can't do it, we're not Tesla type thing. But neither was Tesla. Tesla. There's a path you can follow. It's less about the end state. It's more about how you set up the journey. And everyone's on that journey at some point. It's basically and maybe some people never really think they want to be on that journey today.
Yep.
But if you say, are you sure that the survival of your business will be such that you will never be on that journey,
Yep.
when would you start planning for that? When? If
Hope
it's
so.
2025, right? So if it's 2025 and you're like, we're nowhere on that journey, truth is you are on that journey. It's just, you may not think it yet. You may not realize it's a survival thing. You may think it's about increasing production, decreasing waste, but really it's about survival. Really, it's about the survival of the manufacturing base.
Sofian, maybe what are your thoughts on that side? What kind of conversations you're having with customers? What kind of challenges are they facing in a general sense?
Yeah, true. Actually, this is what we are trying to figure out here, and trying to figure out also how OA is standing here, in US market and so on. I've been talking to people here. The main big thing is they confuse WinCC OA and WinCC and stuff. And most of them, they say like, hard to get to it. And as Walker stated in his presentation earlier, WinCC OA is for engineers. So if you are, for example, I don't want to say something not really correct, but if you are not at that level where you can develop application and you know what you want to do and the path of your digital transformation, it's hard, not hard, but you need somebody who knows OA to do something properly. You need somebody who knows what he is doing, because I can give you tools, I can give you crazy tools, crazy things, but if you don't know how to use them, you're gonna make nothing out of them. It's useless. Yeah.
Absolutely, guys. I think this is fantastic. Let me ask you each one last question, starting with you, Sofian. If there is one takeaway you want end users and our listeners to take from the presentation, from this view of WinCC OA, what is it?
I would say this so clearly. If you want to take your digital transformation to another level, then WinCC OA and Siemens is the way to go.
I love it. Caleb, do you want to follow up on that? Or do you just want to double down?
I would say if you're at a point where you're ready to go beyond the dashboard, that's when it's really encourage you to have a conversation with us once you're ready to go beyond the dashboard. If you still haven't gotten to the dashboard, then OA is probably not for you.
Let me ask you maybe a deeper question on that side, Caleb, just to expand a little bit more. What kind of proof of concept projects have you guys seen, like ignite that spark of, hey, like we see the value and now we're maybe going to roll this out a little bit more? What's a small project?
Unfortunately, so this is the hard part. Everything the Tiger team is doing is because every one of the people that we're working with, they consider this like transformational to their business. Okay. So because they consider that, it's all under NDA.
Yes.
So that we only deal, if you're doing something, so the short answer is they absolutely see the value in it, and they're at the point in their journey where they can see the value. Oftentimes, a lot of these customers have software engineers and data scientists in-house.
Interesting.
So not always, but oftentimes they do. And so the short answer is there is value to be unlocked at that level. I wish I could say more. I need to navigate a little bit more with.
Absolutely. We do not want you to break NDA, but just knowing that all of the projects you deal with are under NDA is awesome.
All of them are NDA'd.
Caleb, Sofian, thank you so much for joining us. I know this will be the first of many conversations we have with you guys about this. And Caleb, at some point, we'll talk more about Tiger Team, if and when that's ever possible. No, everyone, this has been awesome. This is the continued manufacturing hub coverage at ProveIt. Please continue to stay tuned. We've got more of these episodes coming out at once a week or twice a week. And check us out Wednesday afternoons, 4 o'clock East Coast time, 1 o'clock Pacific time, 10 p.m. Austria time, Central European time. How'd you just come stay up late and watch Vlad and I continue to have our normal conversations. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Can we just ask either Harry or Mark, for the viewers at home, again, you guys are an IIoT platform. What are you here to prove? What was the goal? What did you build?
Before Harry goes that question, I'd like to talk more about that platform positioning. Because one thing that's very important to stress, we are very strong on the factory floor and on the operations. Many IoT platforms, the background of the company and the design, your IT guys are cloud infrastructure guys, they start to go to the factory floor. But factory floor is a real interesting place.
Absolutely.
I don't want to use another word in a live broadcast, but we were born doing factory floor startups really in the hardware floor, and we grow to be an enterprise IoT solution also. So we do have many things on the system that are very true requirements for industrial solutions and for factory floor.
Okay.
That typically someone that's only IoT will not do that. I will always say that we are also a SCADA platform and at minimum an IoT.
Okay.
That additional I for industrial is very important for our positioning.
Gotcha.
Now about ProveIt, Samuel, what are plans to show here?
Yeah, so we really wanted to show off the platform's capability
Yep.
and how a manufacturing company could use it effectively to deal and solve some of their challenges and issues, as the whole premise of ProveIt is about here. Our solution is really starts with the connect and collect and showing kind of the ease and elegance of the way we connect into this type of environment with MQTT, SQL, and OBC.
Okay.
So start with connect, collect, move to transformation of the data. We have an internal UNS that basically can become aware of external UNSs.
Okay.
Internally, we could transform the data through scripting or just modeling of all sorts. So we showed off some of that with the platform. And then the result is the visualization. So the deep kind of visualization and interactive dashboards that would help this specific type of manufacturer make real-time decisions while they're producing so that they can effectively improve their efficiency and quality.
Gotcha. And so ultimately for the viewers, I don't want to make the assumption that everyone understood the assignment at ProveIt. You were given a data set via a UNS, which is ultimately a MQTT broker in this case. And Mark, maybe to expand a little bit on what Harry has mentioned, could you explain to us what you have built and maybe what kind of tools within like Tatsoft have you had?
On the concept of connect, transform, and present, I'm going to detail on the requirements we put to this solution. What I want to prove here.
Yes.
Number one, we have 36 or 39 companies publishing data. The connection, you can do the traditional SCADA system that you map the variables. Need to be able to do what we do here, that whoever decides to put new assets here, our application will recognize automatically. And you'll be able to use that data without having previous knowledge that data will be there. If we did application, be able to show the stats, the OE for production lines, for bag machines, for laminators, whoever published that type of assets, the application should be self-aware and dynamically responsive on the connectivity, so don't need to change anything. That's what we want to prove on the first part on the connectivity. On the transformation, it's also important because even you don't go to analytics, let's say even more simple. Some companies that publish OE 0 to 1. Some companies that publish 0 to 100%. Some companies put the line in the machine not on the 95 standard, they put way down the tree. So we had to do lots of, and that's a real life application. Exactly, show. That's
like
what really happens.
Yes, we talked a little bit about like before the stream, and I really resonate with that, right? Because you get to the plant floor, even the same machine OEM is not going to have the same exact data between different machines. So I think transformation is really important here to find.
And besides Python that many people use, we have the full .NET, C# and VB.NET. Very powerful and high performance client-side and server-side codes to manage that. Then on the presentation layer, what were the requirements to our specification? First of all, things like switching color schemas. Come on, this year that should be out of the box. and should be able to deploy our application in different quality schemas without having to do any programming for that. Beyond of that, the performance of the UI, whatever running locally or in a URL from a mobile device, because we came from factory floor, we know that 1, 2, 3 seconds is not acceptable. When you have an operation machine, the guy click a button, and he does not see anything happen, how much, what you say by your experience, what the expectation of reaction?
Usually over 300 to maybe 400 milliseconds, it becomes painful.
It's
it
a
becomes
milliseconds.
Yes.
So I don't know if the camera will be able to pick up properly, but this same application, when you open the mobile URL, you still have the same performance on the web page. So we are able to deploy very rich graphics, either natively or through web, or in different devices, and adapting properly that UI to the specific devices. So if you are on the desktop, you have all the areas. If you're on the mobile, you have to reorganize the data. And we do that automatically also. So the same solution can be deployed in manufacturing. So those were the details on why those 3 requirements, they are a little more complex. Because when you say, collect, transform, and present, in some sense, everyone just is doing that.
If I could make one more comment too, is our entire application is done with our platform.
Okay.
We're not using any other third-party tools. We're connecting into the data, but the full application is done with us. Now that in the real world, it's not always just us. So we're that open, flexible part we can fit into most manufacturing or industrial landscapes. But for ProveIt, we were able to do everything within our own.
Okay.
And more than that, we understand as much as possible, if your tool is important, you should have that built in. I'll give you specific examples. We have 70 communication protocols that we install free of the products. We have a built-in MQTT broker to help your tests. We have a built-in OPC server. We have a built-in OPC publish simulator and MQTT simulator. So we have lots of tools in all areas. So the connectivity will be to publish data to another application or collect data. But we typically don't need to go after tools to fill some places that, okay, cannot do that. Let's pick up let's pick up another tool. No, typically the platform, even the .NET, we have the editor and the compilers built in.
I want to maybe ask Harry on that side, right? Because I think with so much flexibility also comes maybe the decisiveness of what you can use this for, right? And ultimately, I'm curious, when you're having conversations with some of your customers, what are they looking and seeing Tatsoft as? Is it to build their HMI systems? Is it to build their SCADA systems? Is it to build their MES? Is it as an analytics tool, right? Or is it all of the above maybe? And what is a general use case and breakdown?
Our number one challenge is it's all of the above.
Yes.
So
I think that's the best and the worst thing about a platform, right? And we've got several platforms here, and that's what I think about all of them, right? Like, it's the best and the worst that it's a platform, right? The thing that you start building your HMIs on is probably not going to be the thing that you think of as your IIoT platform, right? Like, it could do all of it, but many groups think about the tool they may own as one particular thing.
We can give some general guidelines.
Yep.
Where we really excel. The more you have real-time data, we are great. The more closer you are to the real factory floor data, we are better. The more you are unwilling to compromise your specifications. You do an application around the tool. That's the old school. The new school you are, forget the tool. I want to achieve those results. The tool is not the main actor. You should be able to deliver. Those are some of the criteria where likely we'll be, and also very scalable. We have applications running inside Cisco routers using only 500 megabytes of memory, and distribute applications with 500,000 points in electrical distribution. So in general, if your solution has some of those requirements, it's more likely And one more, the .NET is very important. We support the full .NET to Windows with Active Directory integration, and the .NET 8 deploying any device in Linux, in Docker, whatever. And being .NET is very important because it's easier to connect, to have better security management. You can more powerful programming languages. That's another item to your answer.
I want to go back maybe to some of the important points that you mentioned and dig into just a little bit deeper, right? So you mentioned connectivity, and I think that it's important to recognize here at ProveIt, you're going to a UNS broker, which I would argue is not the common connector, at least some of the clients I'm talking to. So maybe what does the typical deployment for you look like, and ultimately what are you pulling data out of, and what can you talk to, right? Both, I want to say on the plant floor side, but also maybe at the ERP level or other systems.
Yeah, I would say typically we're connecting directly to some kind of control or I/O data collection device at the north side, I guess we'll call it. And then in today's world, a lot more requirements to be able to take that information and publish it to either a more open, like MQTT-based system, or specifically to Microsoft's ERP or SAP. And those connections, again, we're open on the southbound end also, so we we have several ways to do it, but RESTful APIs, all sorts of ways to communicate openly to a variety of systems.
And on the connectivity down, in the last 3 decades, we created more than 250 communication protocols. So one thing that we are very know also, whatever protocol you need to have in the industrial plants, we were able to bring that back for data to our platform. And then we go up with all those many options Harry pointed out. But whatever is control logics, Modbus TCP/IP, legacy Bailey system, we have all those industrial protocols built in to do that first level optimization in real life.
Code assist seems to be a really popular thing lately for our prospects and customers, and we built a very nice discoverable interface to the code assist PLC.
To the people that's not familiar with code sys, they have around 17 brands of PLCs and controllers
Absolutely.
that are based in their engine.
I want to talk about that a little bit more, about what you guys are seeing, what the demand in the community is. So here we're at ProveIt, we're talking a lot about MQTT with the UNS central broker. Are you guys getting a lot of demand, a lot of questions about that? What sort of communication protocols, what sort of conversations are you having, and has that changed over the last couple of years?
About MQTTs, at least in our experience, not yet a reality at the factory floor. But in many large, very conservative customers, it's becoming a reality on the high ends.
Yes, absolutely.
So we do have many applications that are running edge devices, getting data from control logics, Rockwell devices, and publishing up to a broker. Getting data from universal robots.
Absolutely.
So we start to have lots of conversation to be able to have that connection up to some sort of MQTT protocol. That's really start to happen at that level.
Yeah, I would say a good 50% is still a traditional, we're talking to a PLC, we're providing SCADA-like application. Now more of a requirement to say, now where does that data go?
Absolutely.
There for sure, but now the other 50% is really this, I will call it the newer, more modern architectures,
Absolutely. I would agree. I see more and more groups having MQTT in their specifications or the conversation about MQTT happening. Lots of times we look at those legacy controllers and we can't natively publish to MQTT. So typically it's some sort of OPC UA server, and we're making that connection, but then we're also looking at perhaps smart sensors, and can we go publish directly to a broker? But I certainly see more and more demand, and I imagine that we will continue to see more demand, or at least conversations around MQTT, which I think is very good for the community as a whole.
Yeah, if I can make one more comment there is, I was listening to Arlen yesterday, and he comes out of the oil and gas industry.
Yep.
And we see some pretty good in that marketplace, people upgrading their SCADA systems and their infrastructure around MQTT.
Absolutely.
And we just recently did a fairly large project with one of our integrator partners running, this was a Cisco router, out in the field doing the connection to the PLC, classic back to the T. So they modernized their whole communications architecture and future-proofed it. And it was a fun application to do. Mark was very involved with that.
And it's important to explain about architectures. People won't be overexcited about MQTT, because if you think about our edge device, publishing MQTT data up, like the solution here described, there is no reason at all to try to replace the protocol from the edge devices to the fields by MQTT. No reason at all. In fact, in many projects, it does not even make sense. That's the difference between IoT, industrial IoT, or generic IoT. I will explain briefly. If you have IoT applications work with meters, house meters, you went to an application that you can very easily add and remove meters in the system. And you're not going to create alarms if a meter go down because that house or so. They're just stopping collect that information. If it's a more traditional production line, pharma, oil and gas, when you are talking about the sensors, you don't want to add or remove sensors dynamically. Wow, in fact, many applications go through a FGA certification. So the reality in the factory floor, most of the industrial process, we don't want to do things that dynamic. That's one of the many benefits on MQTT at that level, if it's industrial plants. But when you have that, your edge, and start do data consolidation, data aggregation at the enterprise level, now MQTT is great. So don't try to replace, I saw something, I have this sensor, this meter for temperature that you publish right away in MQTT. That's not really the main focus.
Right.
You can do that for fun, but that's not really the point that MQTT was created for.
Definitely agree. Let me ask you maybe on a more fundamental level, right? If I'm looking to create maybe a proof of concept, like putting myself in the shoes of a customer, right? I'm a senior engineer in a manufacturing facility. We probably don't have a modern SCADA or MES. I'm looking to create a proof of concept, right? Can I go to Tatsoft and maybe create some kind of a demo for my upper management to sell them on this idea? And maybe what does that look like? What do I need? Is that just the software running on my laptop, or is that a server rollout? What does that look like?
Just the software running on your laptop.
Okay.
And you can download from our website the full configuration with no requirements for license for the configuration tool. And what you can accomplish, probably should show what it is for ProveIt.
Sure.
This application we created in around for 1 or 2 weeks. The main development was around 1 week, then we keep publishing here and there, but it was in 2 weeks. So what we did in this case, we create custom pages to the many of those companies here. So if you go to the Dallas factory, we have that custom page showing the assets that you can go to the area. If you go to the Litmus, you just go to their website. You go to Bosch, I just showing some data tables because I didn't know they have. So let's stay with our data that I know. But that's at the site level, just to do a simulation that you can have many sites in the system. Then when you go to the line, we have the KPI for the selected, area, not line. So those are the many lines we have in that area. Then you can drill down to one specific operation for the line. So we put together dashboards that you can have traditional monitor of states. You can have some historic information, some traditional operational data for that machine, and all live with real data. Then you go to a traditional OE page. And then if there is data that you don't understand, you just put a table with a data grids. And this concept can be applied to any kind of assets. Just for fun, we put here also some solar panels. Yep. So the idea of this application is, as I'm navigating, I have those different types of assets that will react dynamically to what you have. And if you want to see that application on an iPad or an iPhone, so I do a simulation for iPhones here, the system will automatically switch to a form factor that's more suitable to iPhone visualization, as you can see. So that's how your application looks on the iPhone. And this demo that we're showing here is available as a web client from our main website also.
Yeah, I think Walker earlier was very excited to see what you guys have built and was telling others to connect and just go to the IP address.
Yes.
And ultimately you can view it from any phone, any device. I think that's a really cool way to display the application. Harry, maybe to ask you on the similar train of thought, right? When you're having these early conversations with some of the customers, and I think it's important still in our industry, I don't think everyone understands the value or maybe the insights of data. Maybe what are some of the early proof of concept type of projects that you have seen? It could be maybe energy monitoring, maybe it's OEE, like what other conversations have you had with them?
The specific applications are all over the place with manufacturers. So we usually start with just base level data collection. Can you get some data log some data to a historian? We work with Canary. We work natively with SQL, so you can log data to SQL. So get some data, connect to your PLCs, get some data collecting, get some visuals around trending. We have some real nice trending tools. That's a good place to start. Then you may move into maybe some downtime or some other energy monitoring. It's definitely an application that people are looking at. So, and that one's pretty straightforward. Again, we've got great tools, easy to connect, easy to visualize. So get to that level, and then you can show it off a little bit, and we go from there. Then the platform, like Mark said, you could download it. We provide the development tools for free with 2 hours of runtime, actual connection runtime. The development will run as long as you need it to. And then we have a training site, so you can go get some basic education on how to get going. And if you need help from there, we have application people that can help out and tech support. So we got everything lined up to get guys going on their own, or if they need some help, you go to Mark, it's direct to end user, but also through systems integrators. So that's a huge piece of what we're doing. We provide a great open tool for an integrator to be able to take to his customers to solve problems. So end user systems integrator. The other area is OEMs. So we grew up, Mark has been working with OEMs for many years. So the platform lends itself to levels of customization that only OEMs have those specific requirements. We had a gentleman come to us less than an hour ago with an OEM type requirement. And then he was, okay, I need something to put on my machine that can handle the data published, the communications, the graphics, the publishing. And we're like, okay, this is a unique platform that you can put right on the machine and do all of your needs in one place. So.
Ooh, very interesting. Vlad knows I love, and the audience knows, I love to ask forward-looking questions. I love to get predictions. I'd love to know where you guys think the industry is going to go, and maybe share some of the new frameworks version 10 features that you guys just released. So I'd love to know what you guys release and where you think the industry is going to continue to go, either from a platform side or for a user needs side, or any and all of those.
I do one initial comment. We put lots of effort in version 10 about easy to use.
Okay.
Because this is a good example. The data is fully dynamic. It's not an easy specification. And it took that only between 1 or 2 weeks. So one important feature that must say it's connected to a previous question about the proof of concepts.
Yep.
It takes only from a few weeks, worst case scenario, a few months, at very low cost, that proof of concepts.
Yep.
The only reason it may take a few months is not because of the software configuration that you can do a few days.
Yes.
You decide what
Yes.
I want to do and where is my data. After you have that, the tool is flexible enough to not just a couple days to the wiring. That's one of the things that's important regarding what's new for version 10.
Okay.
So the first part of the question, what we put the effort. We put the effort to make more user-friendly.
Okay.
We put the effort to be more flexible to deal with those dynamic scenarios that your environment is changing. We put effort to be the best performance possible on web graphics
Okay.
in the market. We put effort to make the platform future-proof,
Okay.
meaning we put some infrastructure there for AI, this and that, that you collect the benefits over the next 5-10 years. What else on the feature sets that first class would look like?
Yeah, I think you did a lot of them right there. The technology, I'll call it refresh, bring it to today, future-proof it. That was a huge part of version 10.
Okay.
So, because we had been in the market for a while, we really needed to get to the new .NET 8 or what used to be called .NET Core, and also another huge technology upgrade. It's underneath the hood, but WebAssembly. It's definitely a game changer moving forward. So I see those as a big part of version 10 from a tech standpoint.
Yeah, make easy Docker deployments, deploy on the end. There are lots of infrastructure technology that work with data.
Okay.
And the second part of
The second part of the question is, you guys have a bunch of super fun features. I love the comment of future-proof. Where do you imagine that the industry is going to go? What will the client and user demands be? How do you predict the software will change and the needs of the users will change in the next 2 or 3 years?
What Walker Reynolds would love to explain, I hope I quote him properly, no, the right in the ads, is that the previous stack, we have all those stacked applications.
Yes.
Exchange data, one of another one. And he put the concept to have the enterprise-defined namespace and HDR and put that together. That same concept you need to, for not necessarily using the concept of defining space, think about any automation projects. There are many automation solutions that they do with too many building blocks.
Yes.
I saw some nice, of course I'm not saying exactly who, someone that was make promotion that put a nice gateway. That said, I have this product here that can publish to this guy that can publish to my gateway, and then my gateway can publish to this other guy.
Yes.
There are 3 companies and 4 products involved in how to move data to Snowflake. How we move data to Snowflake? We pick up any solution from the edge, low cost from the counter, from the high end, and you publish to Snowflake directly.
Okay.
So I think that our mindset, I believe the industry will start to recognize that.
Okay.
A platform should deserve that name, should be your generic toolbox that can solve all those requirements for data flow, data normalization, data integration, and you should not be adding lots of components to fill things that not bringing real additional value to the process.
Okay.
You should be adding analytics.
Okay.
You should be adding custom reports. You should be adding something specific to that process.
Okay.
But not having to worry with many different tools.
Let me dig a little bit deeper there, Mark, because Vlad and I have long talked how there are many companies in the space. And sometimes it's difficult to go pick the entire tech stack. And as a person who has gone through and architected and deployed a tech stack, and more frustrating as a person who sometimes comes in on the back end to see some of those choices, it does feel like we add complexity, right?
Yes.
There are many ways to go about doing a project, and it feels like some of them are maybe complex just to be complex. Now, there are certainly projects who, whatever reporting tool, there is an industry-specific reporting tool, and that reporting tool makes a lot of sense than building a lot of reports. Or you're looking for one particular tool, or you're going to the cloud. Do you imagine that we'll see fewer companies, let's say 5 years from now? Do you imagine that there'll be fewer competitors, fewer companies here, and there will be winners of, hey, we have gotten to the point of lots of people are using us for the entirety of our platform? Or do you imagine that the market will just be more fractured and there might be 10 different ways and 10 different tech stacks that different customers pick and choose?
Regarding specific skulls,
Yes.
the number of companies will keep growing a lot, because you talk about machine learning, reporting, madness, those terms are completely generic, but how to implement in one specific subsector is very specific. So we'll see a huge proliferation of companies working on the specific, bringing the real value on the solutions. When you go for the more infrastructure products, you see that market shrinking. In fact, right now, everyone knows that Walker does not measure his words. He talks what he thinks. Make that very clear. He doesn't like to be good or bad with anyone. He just speak out his mind. And I'm very happy to say that his keynote, he say, okay, as platform, I see at least now 3 players. That's frameworks and 2 other ones. So even now, not talk the long term.
Yes.
When you, at least for his point of view, when you need a wiring tool, he's counting only 3 companies that are capable to do that infrastructure integration. And that's very important to understand our company. Times they have, what you have on specific analytics. We have integration to any kind of company you can manage to provide the data in an easy way and present back. But our platform has really focused to be the infrastructure platform. Whatever you need to do to get data, move data, organize data, do calculations from data, do any kind of integration and any kind of advanced UI, you need to have out of the box. What you can add, Harry?
That's a lot. For sure, I think the requirements are really all about data. So I think to your question about where do all the vendors and the fragmentation, I think always there's going to be some big players that emerge as kind of leaders for the big enterprise stuff. But I think there's, where we're positioned, I think there's a place for us, and it's a big world. You know what I mean? So I look at UNS, great concept, unifying data. That's happy that we met Walker and we kind of Mark and Walker connected, and we built a lot of things around those concepts. So that was big stuff. But I think there's a big world even outside of ProveIt, and I think our platform is, the key is open, flexible, and then connect and collect. It's the stuff we've been doing for years. Connect and collect, transform, and then stay open, be able to fit in anybody, in most landscapes.
Perfect.
Let me ask you maybe one last question.
I was going to say, we've got about one last question worth of. That's fine.
Last question before I let Dave wrap up. And I'm curious, as you're having these conversations again with customers, my feel is that there's still a struggle on this, you could label it OT, IT, maybe integration or understanding more of these data insights. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on maybe what are some of their challenges. I would say more on the personnel side, right? Are they maybe lacking the people to be able to integrate such systems? Are they lacking maybe more data scientists? Are they lacking people who can understand both the plant floor data, which I think is very critical, and then be able to translate it all the way up to IT insights? What kind of conversations on that side are you having with customers?
We definitely have a people problem because they're completely different structure inside the company. That's very challenging, and they don't really have the proper understanding over the side. They don't talk much. But it's a big problem that we try to solve our platform. Many tools they like to say, we allow OT IT integration. That's a copy paste you see all over the place. But that's not the reality in most platforms. So when you try to have that system, you go right away in two problems. They have some legacy solutions that are not able to play well if you try to cross domains. And the people, they're not even the same. So everything's wrong, the people and the tools. We are solving the tools part. The people, Harry, is
People is definitely a challenge. That is, and the amount of legacy technology that is out there. And I think with the newer push to IIoT or IoT, the ideal thing is for the IT guys to skip and just, hey, we can just connect right to these machines and this will be easy to do. And then they start to run into the reality that you run into in an industrial real-time environment. So the good news is that I think there's a lot of great investment in the tools there with platforms like ours that can help these guys bridge some of these gaps.
One example is why you can run inside Cisco routers. Cisco router, the IT can deploy. If an IPC, it must go through another budget.
Absolutely. And I find, like, really brief side note, last year I learned that in IT, a web page that is real time updates every 30 seconds. So that is nowhere near enough time for industrial.
And we also don't have enough time to get into the real-time argument, Vlad, because that is definitely more than 30 seconds of what is and what is not real-time. Harry, Mark, this has been absolutely fantastic. I want you guys to look at the camera. We're asking everyone one last question. If there's an end user who maybe didn't see you, who's here, if there's a listener, what do you want them to remember about Tatsoft? What do you want them to remember about frameworks here at ProveIt?
I'll go back to some of the things I was saying before, but the open, flexible, designed with real-time data in mind. Absolutely. The part I don't like to go to as much is very affordable.
And as it's rates, if the focus is on the solution once rates, not what the tool can do. I like to work companies that are unwilling to compromise their specifications. So instead of learning the tool and say, what I can do with that tool, no. They want to achieve some results around real-time data, and we will deliver. So he put the focus in their solution, and they look in something that's flexible enough and with the performance that can deliver his specifications, so he does not have to think about the tool.
Perfect. Mark, Harry, thank you guys so much for being here. I look forward to having you guys on the show again at some point soon and seeing you around a bunch of additional conferences this year. If you guys want to know more about Tatsoft, if you want to learn more about frameworks that we will now pronounce correctly, at least for today, Vlad does an amazing job. He's going to drop all of that information in the notes. We'll have it out on the videos. We'll also make sure that you guys can connect with both Tatsoft as well as Mark and Harry wherever and however you guys want to go do that. Again, everyone, thank you for watching Manufacturing Hub's continued coverage here at the ProveIt conference. If you guys want to watch more, again, continue to check out these videos and watch Vlad and I normal Wednesday, 4 o'clock East Coast time every week as we continue to have these awesome conversations. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.